Exactly,
No,
yeah.
we weren't.
To 40, yeah, it's just round numbers.
Someone had a timer
You
going
can
on
have
over
a
there
position
the other night.
family coverage.
Do you want to have a family?
try that.
I don't, it's a bad idea.
Good, we'll sign you up.
We'll have Kim talk to them about trying to get, you know,
Cut out a meal a day? That's the simple way
rent
to do it.
system. Talk about car insurance.
All right, we'll call to order the combined Select Board Budget Committee meeting of, let's see, today is Monday, March 24th. We're here in the Parker Room at the Opera House. And tonight, we're going to start with the Police Department, Randy Chief Gagne, page 163.
Why don't you start, Randy? You're here and you got your glasses on. So.
Thanks. I can't see you when I
official.
have them down, so I have to pull them up. Good evening. Thank you once again for an invitation to come and ask for money like we do every year. I'd like to introduce Chris Young. He's our lieutenant with the police department who joined us back in November. We've worked hard to bring you a budget that represents the operational needs of the police department for the next year. You'll see that my recommendation and John's is a little different. I've recommended in this budget that we add one more officer to bring our staffing level up to a level where, should we lose somebody during the year, that we would already have somebody in place to help with that transition during that period. If you let me digress just a little, since I came to Rockport in 2016, I've always advocated to the managers that Rockport was severely understaffed for policing. Most of our shifts are one officer response. That's all well and good as long as you're fully staffed. And I've always kind of been waiting for the day that we get the perfect storm of things that happen, and that happened this fall. And what happened this fall is we went from a fully staffed police department with a new recruit in the field training officer program who could not find a reasonable place to live in this town or anywhere close, and parted ways with the department. So that put us an officer down. Our officers, our training staff had been training that officer for almost 16 weeks. So when you have a vacancy and you hire somebody new and they have no experience, they are assigned to a field training officer. So not only are we filling the vacant shift, we're also probably paying the field training officer overtime, and the new recruit is being paid as well. And you can imagine how quick the dollar signs add up when that happens. Not having a deep bench is very problematic in a small agency. So, with one vacancy, and we tried to find somebody else, Rockland PD, just south of here, had nice big beautiful billboards out on Route 17 advertising that they're paying their officers for working 36 hours a week. They pay them for 40 hours, and they work 3 days on and 4 days off. Well, you can imagine when you're overworked and you're working a lot of overtime in a small department, when the opportunity arises to go somewhere else where you can still have the job you love, a shift that you want, and some days off, and getting paid for 40 hours when you only have to work 36 becomes very attractive. So we lost probably one of the best police officers that I've ever worked with to Rockland PD. Couldn't blame her for taking that opportunity. So that put us 2 officers down. So now we're down to 3 officers working. State of Maine mandated that all officers last year complete defensive tactics training in person and go through all the maneuvers. One of our officers did everything that he was supposed to. He stretched, and during the exercise tore his hamstring. He was out for 6 weeks. That took us down to 2 officers. Now you see how fast you can go from very happy with full staff to having nobody. I had 2 officers in Rockport who kept the ship going. One week, one of them worked 100 hours. The other one worked probably 90. I was in a very bad situation because I had so much time that I needed to use, and I had planned for November, or I was going to lose it. So I was, and John wanted me to take it, but did allow me to work from my tree stand, which I hunt a lot in November, to work on things, be out of the office, and we coordinated on how we were going to address the issue that we had in front of us and get through this. We knew we had to do something very creative to find 3 patrol officers. This market out here is so competitive that the officers that we have are recruited on a daily basis almost. We're seeing offers never seen before. I've been in this job for 37 years. Chris is a retired police chief from Rockland who served a career with Rockland PD. We've never seen anything like this. But we knew we had to get a plan together because failure was not an option. So we got together with our 2 remaining staff members who represent the police union. We met in John's office and said, what are we going to do? And we had to go out and aggressively make some offers, find some quality staff, and get them in there. Our target was to find staff that was senior, that we could recruit, that we weren't going to have to send to the academy, that we could get out and working. We also wanted to take a moment to look at where the department was and how the structure of the department was set up. So I was the only administrator within the department, and we had discussed that, we had had a lack of an administrative assistant. I can't be here 24 hours a day. I have duties in Camden that I split with Rockport, so sometimes Camden calls on me for extended periods of time. Rockport is the same. I spent a lot of time here last fall, so you were getting more of your bang for the buck there. But we felt that it was important to bring somebody in that could not only assist me, but also be in that administrative position to make those decisions when I'm not available. I'm always available, 24 hours a day. You can ask anybody who calls me. But there are times that that critical response to have somebody in that command structure is on scene quick. So we looked, and it just happened that Chris out of the blue one day gave me a call, and timing is everything. His background as an investigator, detective sergeant, administration, former police chief made him an ideal candidate, and we were able to recruit Chris. At the same time, John and I were meeting with the union. The union was asking us if we could go on a fairly, put it out there, a very high sign-on bonus to attract somebody. So we did that. We offer a $30,000 sign-on bonus, which is kind of unheard of. But when you look at everything in perspective, by the time you hire somebody with no experience and you put them through all the training, that cost far outweighs what we were doing. So John was at a football game and happened to talk to somebody he knew, and their husband was a full-time police officer in another agency. He liked the idea of it. I'd actually been trying for years to get him to come to work for me in Camden. And the timing was right for him. And along with him, he brought a fairly young officer, fresh out of the academy. And we filled the ranks back up in about 3 weeks' time. Totally unheard of. But those officers that we hired are highly qualified. We're not going to have to send any of them to the academy. Now we changed our work schedule, so the officers now work they work 13-hour and 30-minute shifts 3 days per week, and they have 4 days off. We got a better schedule. We got really good candidates. Having that extra help back there relieves some of that, and now we're seeing the dividends of we're not spending the amount of overtime anywhere close. We actually had a few weeks ago, that we had 0 overtime for a week, and I haven't seen that since 2016. If I had, I hadn't noticed it. So, yes, we had to spend some money, but the reward we're going to get out of this is that we have a staff now. We're cutting back on the overtime. The reason I say we should put another officer in, and I know it's a great deal of money, more than John's had to make some hellacious cuts this year to make this budget palatable for everybody. And I totally understand it if it's not possible. But in a small department, unless you have a deeper bench or you don't deepen your bench, if we lose one person, we'll be right back to where we were. I don't want to see that. The other thing, and I hate to scare everybody, but within the next 3 to 5 years, between Camden and Rockport, we have 8 of us that are eligible to retire. Chris has already retired once. Travis could go anytime. He's got his years in. Jim and I are both getting up there. I don't plan on going anywhere. I don't think any of us have that plan, but when you meet that timeline in your retirement career, you look at things different. I mean, I have 4 wonderful grandchildren I like to spend my time with. I don't ever see myself not working because I like to work. But those things, thinking forward, we don't want to be in that situation again where we go from full staff down to nothing and be scrambling. So, yes, these budgets are expensive, and I totally understand it. And it looks hard every time you look at those figures and you say, where can you cut this, where can you... Trying to give you the honest reflection of the circumstances out there. These officers that we have are not going to stop being recruited every day because there's no officers out there. And quite honestly, when we get to that 3 to 5 year period and we start seeing retirements, I think we're going to have some serious issues trying to get people to recruit because the housing market, as you know, is very expensive. And even though the wages are coming up, it's not coming close to being able for somebody to live in Camden, Rockport. I just did the contract in Camden, and that was ratified last week. I've taken the residency requirement out because I've got an officer that lives out towards Augusta. I've got officers that live in Waldo County. I'm looking at hiring an officer now that lives even further out in Waldo County towards the outskirts. And it's an hour commute. It's what you got to do because the lack of affordable housing is really, really hampering. And it's not just the police service, it's fire and EMS and everybody else. Fire schedules work good for the fire department because those people can get that time and they can commute. I mean, Jason, I won't take any of Jason's thunder, but it's a very difficult job for all of us right now. And unless we want to cut services, which I don't believe anybody wants to go from 24-hour coverage per day because your options are fairly limited there. I do hear every once in a while, well, the sheriff's department. Well, the sheriff's department does work 24 hours a day, but they're not obligated to provide police service to communities that have police departments. Now, by state statute, they can negotiate, they can go into a contract with the agency. And I've emailed the sheriff and we've talked about coverage options and things like that, and he has graciously said, hey, we could help you within our budget constraints if you needed, but say we were to go home at 2 o'clock. You might be waiting for somebody to come from Friendship, Washington, one of those places. It's all in how fast you want your response time. Even if we did call-outs, Chris is over in Warren, I'm in Searsmont, there's a delay there, where now you have somebody that immediately responds. Having a 24-hour healthcare facility kind of says you need to have somebody that can respond to those incidents there. I can go on as long as you want, but I just wanted to give you a broad overview of it as to where we are. Consolidation comes up this time of the year. And, there's the 2008 consolidation report that never went anywhere. Troubles with consolidation, and I think it's a novel idea, and I think at some
And
point...
do you mean consolidation with Camden, Rockport?
Camden and Rockport. And honestly, if anything should have given the two towns heartburn, it's when they asked me to come over here and try to work 2 police departments together, because policing is notoriously territorial, but we never had that, and it's worked, and it's worked very well. Now, it might have been the fact that my sister and I grew up in Rockport, just up the street on Union Street, that I might have had the trust of some of the people that they said, yep, I was the Rockport kid who tried to get hired by Forrest Dossett, who wanted me to be a dispatcher first, and I said, no way, and then Camden hired me.
Forrest hired me.
Yeah, we know. But let me tell you, Forrest was pretty shrewd, for those of you who remember him, because as soon as Camden paid for all of my training, he came right over and said, hey, why don't you come over and work in Rockport? And he was always near and dear to me. But, I worked in Camden for a number of years. They asked me to come over for 6 months after a major incident, and it was to get things worked out, and within the first 6 months, they asked me to basically stay for a year, and then it went to 3, and I'm still here, and I'm happy to be here. I think what we've put together, we're still 2 separate agencies. I've never tried to make Rockport PD, Camden PD, or vice versa. Each department has individual identities. My sister will vouch, our father was a staunch taxpayer who, the first thing he did was looked in the book to see who didn't pay their taxes because that really made him mad. And he told me one time, he says, you're spending the people's money, you better spend it wisely. And, I took that to heart. What we're doing has worked, will continue to work. If at some point everybody wants to get together and look at consolidation, and go down that road, that's always an option. I don't think that we have really looked at that. As you know, there have been a few issues that the towns have needed to get resolved for the last few years that you're still working on, and to bring that project on would probably be problematic, in my opinion, at this time. Like I said, you want me to keep talking, I can go
Well,
forever. I can start answering some questions.
Yeah, and I thank you and John and the others who put together the
I got-
package that we needed in
Let me
order
just
to
throw it out
staff.
there. If it wasn't for Sergeant Jim Moore and Officer Antonio Del Vecchio stepping up,
Yeah.
they're not really liking it that the overtime's cut because, they like it, and I don't blame them because it's pretty good money. But those guys really, that's how much this department meant to them to make sure that we succeeded. And we all worked together, and we couldn't have pulled this off unless it was a team effort by everybody. And, but we were very lucky this time. Next time, the results might be different. So,
So let's,
I have a question.
Go ahead, Michelle.
So does your department head number include an officer, and John, your manager number does not?
That's right.
So is that difference really 60,000 for full all in? If I were to take 517 minus 456, is the difference 60,000?
That's just for the benefit.
that's just the benefits.
Right.
The
The
salary-
wages
Oh,
are-
the wage, I didn't include that,
Yeah.
okay.
2008.
nice,
flying
nice
2008.
trick.
We tried,
Nice,
we
you
tried
tried,
that,
you
we tried
tried.
that.
Could,
So
could I,
84,000 for the,
84 total, all in.
no, 84 is for the salary. We don't, for whatever reason, we don't combine salaries and benefits.
Gotcha, okay, gotcha.
Madam Chair, I brought another salesman with me. He'd like to speak if he can.
I just like to give a little, I started with Rockport in 1994 as a reserve while I was in college. Since that time, Rockport has never been a full-service police department, meaning criminal investigations always had to be outsourced to outside agencies. Bringing me in has allowed me to change that, but giving that new, or adding that additional officer is really going to allow me to conduct all major criminal investigations that occur in Rockport, which is a huge benefit to the taxpayers, the community, and the police department.
I don't know if he's brought a black cloud with him, but he has been right out straight with criminal investigations for the last 2
Well,
months.
the environment's changed a lot in
It
this
has.
lovely little town, unfortunately.
Yes, sir.
Randy, I know you and I have talked about this before, but I feel it urgent to bring up again. I am very concerned about the meteoric rise in the coffee and donut budget for the police department. Now,
Well,
you guys used to just go to
I can,
Grafham's
I
and
can,
they'd give
I
you
can
a cup of
explain that,
coffee.
because Jason's taking all of his good coffee and donuts over to the new station, so we gotta kind of pay for it now.
All right, well, maybe Chris.
We
can work
appreciate
on
it for all the years.
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just wondering, if you bring in a new officer, I know in the past we've had a lot of problems with overtime.
Yep.
And what do you estimate you're gonna be saving
That's-
in terms of overtime?
Well, that's a very hard one to pin down because we never know what the circumstances is. But the reason I would like to bring that person is because I could add them to a middle shift. Sergeant Moore works the middle shift right now. If I put another officer on there, then we can slide those for overtime coverage. So if somebody on the day shift takes a vacation for a week, we can slide the middle person up to cover, and the same thing sliding down. So that extra body would give us that ability to be like the light switch, up and down for coverage. So that would definitely impact the overtime line.
Which actually is happening tomorrow night because one of our officers is out sick with the flu. He's working the overnight shift. Sergeant Moore was scheduled to come in at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and work that mid shift And we just spoke on the phone, and he's gonna slide back to 5:30 tomorrow afternoon, work the overnight, so you've eliminated 13 hours of overtime. So I mean, it's not gonna immediately pay for itself, but it will.
So I just did the math, it's 155,000 is what we're looking at for the position.
I was just gonna ask a question about the overtime and how that's factored in here. I'm assuming it's probably just in the actuals and not in any of the budget, yeah? Is that fair?
We budget so we budget $80,000 a year for overtime.
Okay.
So far this year, because of everything that we've been through, we spent about 120,000 in overtime.
So that's included in the 297.
Yeah.
Police department wages.
But you gotta figure at the same time, we had 3 vacancies, so we weren't paying for those vacancies either.
Right, and then
yeah.
you don't have benefits, or at least health
Right.
care is
Right.
sort of
Right.
static if you're paying overtime.
Yeah.
So what would be the difference in cost of going from, I mean, just looking at, personnel numbers or whatever, you say there's a part-time for .3, which I'm assuming is you on the personnel list on the front page.
That's Randy, yeah.
So what would be the difference in cost of going from a 30% contribution to 100% a full-time chief and not hiring another patrolman? And that way we could at least staff the top. That would possibly be a succession plan so that, like you referred to.
So I can tell you, Camden pays, it's about a 60-40 split right now from what I make.
I guess my question is, would we be smarter to just try to hire you full-time or a replacement for you full-time and not hire another patrolman?
Here's the deal. I came over to Rockport and said that I'll be here as long as they want me to be here. They seem to want me to be here. So that's
So why don't you just come over full-time and then we don't need another patrolman?
So Clay, what you're saying is we could do we'd only be doing .7 in a way if you just do the
Right,
math
I mean, we're
rather than
only
the 1.
increasing,
not today, Clay, not today.
well, tomorrow's a new day, young fella. But
Go ahead, Steve.
I'm just thinking, I mean, if the majority of what you were saying was, maybe not the majority, a large part of what you were saying was how we're gonna come up against it if people decide to start retiring, turning over, and that may be a contributing factor to being light staffed again as a turnover rate. So if we don't have a great succession plan for replacement of those personnel, adding a patrolman doesn't necessarily aid in that plan.
Well, we could plug that patrolman into a permanent shift, whichever shift that person retires from. Let's say if Officer Ford were to leave tomorrow, then we could take that person and we could put him into that position at least until we get somebody hired. And then again, as the chief said, depending upon who we get hired, you're talking 6 months to a year if they don't have the experience and need to go to the basic police school.
So what we're doing is just deepening the bench, so we've got that person there if somebody goes. Is 8 an ideal number? Probably not. We want to have somebody in case we do lose that. But it does give you the opportunity to, in the meantime, cut that overtime down by sliding the shifts up and down.
And it also, like I had mentioned, it gives me more of an opportunity to focus on my criminal investigations, which need to be prioritized. I'm working 2 crimes against people right now, and Wednesdays I'm on the road all day, so there's absolutely no way for me to work those cases, and those are fairly time sensitive. There are some major cases, financial cases, for example, that are not time sensitive, and they can be worked as needed or as I have time, but certain assault cases are definitely ones that I need to put at the top of the priority list. And getting me off of the road on that Wednesday would, like I said, really finish Rockport PD being a self-sustained police department.
So if I understand it, you actually are on patrol 1 day a week?
Yes.
Okay.
But don't our citizens with any case expect priority? I think they do.
Well, of course they do.
No, but I mean, I think they do, but I think we put you in a position where you have to prioritize things because you don't have the staff to cover those shifts.
Correct.
So,
We're filling the 8,760 hours of a year with what we've got for staff. We're not overstaffed by any means.
I'm guessing that what Randy is offering us is a conversation which we will then look back on next year and the year after that and the year after that, saying this was the foundation of where you want to go, rather than we have to solve it right now. I think you've given us history, now you're giving us the future, and you're doing your job quite effectively by saying this is what we're worried about, but we're not going to solve it today.
We used to be able to do 3-year plans, 5-year plans. I'd like to have a 1-week
3-month
plan. Honestly, that's the way it is. I think things change so rapidly.
So Randy,
Yeah.
before we move into the nitty-gritty, I just want to make sure I understand. The primary reason that we lost the one officer, you say, is because of the cost of housing?
I've lost 3 in the 2 departments because of housing.
Because of housing?
Yep.
Okay. The ones we did hire, that we gave a signing bonus to, do we have any assurance as a result of that they're going to stick around a while?
If they want the money, they're going to stick around.
So they don't qualify
It's not,
for the money?
it's not one lump sum, here you go, coming through the door, see you later.
Right,
You're gone.
I
No.
didn't see it, so I don't know. how
And
you
everybody that we have hired has housing. They either own their own house or they have housing in the area.
Okay, and then a question for the officer. I'm just curious, because I don't understand police work, so I'm a total layperson.
You're lucky.
But I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express.
Hey.
That's your mind, Doug. How do criminal investigations get dealt with if it's not you? Do we just not go after the criminals then, or what, you know?
What typically has happened with Rockport over the years, it's been outsourced
To where?
to
who?
the sheriff's office.
My detective sergeants in Camden.
To
both of
Camden?
them have done a lot of
So
cases for
do we
Rockport.
have to pay a fee to Camden if we involve their detectives in our town?
So we have a mutual aid agreement, and the police chief in Camden has a very good relationship with the police chief in Rockport, so I can pull recent. Yeah, I don't, I try to keep them separate, but there are times that if Rockport had a sensitive case that needed a detective, I would assign my Camden detective to it. And, you know, we help each other out with short-term coverage and things like that as well. So it all comes out. It doesn't cost either town any more or less to work in conjunction with each other. Now, if we're short on staff in Rockport for an overtime shift, we can open it up to Camden. If somebody over there wants to come over and work the shift, and vice versa, and Camden reimburses for that shift, and Rockport reimburses when they do that.
Okay, and then my next question is a little more to the backing at a higher level on your performance as a department. How do you know if you're doing a good job, average job, or a bad job?
My old chief,
What kind of things do you look at that measure that?
we look at complaint clearances. We look at the quality of our officer reports. Personnel complaints is something that, I don't want to jinx myself, but I am so lucky as a police chief that we have basically 0 officer-related complaints.
Is that unusual for a town of our size?
Depends where you are. I mean, it depends on the environment you work in. These smaller departments where, you know, as an officer, you got to stop at Hannaford, and you got to stop here, and you got to stop there, and you have contact with people, and most people know who is working for the department. You have that more of a community feel. So we just, I mean, it's the quality of the individuals you hire as well. It's been rumored that I don't put up with a lot, and if you step over that line, you're probably going to find a new job. I don't put up with it. And we, like I said, we have excellent staff, but you have to be willing to separate those that do not deserve to be wearing the badge for your department, and I haven't been afraid to do that. It's the community connections that you have that say, hey, thanks a lot for what you're doing. It's those things that you hear from people. As far as the metrics on how we're doing, I judge it by, my old chief said, if your name's not in the newspaper and lawsuits and things like that, you're doing a hell of a job. And, you know, it's pretty much all inclusive there.
So on that point, your we've now got body cams that we purchased and
No, that's in the budget,
This year.
it is in the
and we would
budget.
thank you
So-
for your support
They
with
don't
that.
have them yet.
Okay, well, misspoke, we're budgeting for body
We
cams.
have cruiser cameras that
Yeah.
need to be replaced, and we want to add body cameras with that. It's just another level of security for us, for security for the people. The world is going there. Everybody, every prosecutor wants every bit of footage that you can possibly get. And to not do it, you know, it's the one time you don't have it that you need it, that's really gonna cost you.
Well, I don't disagree at all. But my question is more about, should that help us with legal fees? And is there any, you know, how direct is that correlation?
I can tell you that the only legal fees that this town is inquiring from the police department is FOIA requests.
Yeah.
Because some of them are very tricky on what you can release, and if you release the wrong thing, you're going to get sued. So I routinely will send them over to John to have him send to Bernstein Sure to review. I mean, we've spent some pretty good money on some of these but they're just such delicate matters that unless you have a legal opinion on it, I don't want to be releasing anything unless we absolutely have to.
It will help us too with our liability
Yep.
insurance rates. It's a direct question that's asked on our renewal forms, that unfortunately we have to answer no right now. And once we start answering yes, I don't know what the impact of that is, but it will help our liability
What is the actual
insurance rate.
question we have to answer yes or no to?
If we have body cameras or
Oh,
not.
all right.
We
So-
do have policy in place for those already. We go through a policy company, Durgo Safety, who does all of our policies. All of our policies in the police department are to the main law enforcement accreditation standards. We're not an accredited department, but all of our policies are to accreditation standards.
So then, my next question goes to the police instances
Yep.
reports. And you and I have talked independently about what are some of the growing trends in the community. Do you want to speak a little bit about what you're seeing there?
Yeah, I can tell you fentanyl is scary as hell. And I can tell you that our officers are exposed to hazards every day that should scare them. We're mandated by the state of Maine to carry Narcan at all times when you're uniformed. And I have no issue with that. I was one of the first departments in the area that made it mandatory for our officers to carry Narcan, because we're not God and we don't decide who gets to live and who gets to die. And the impact of an officer having to sit there and watch somebody die is devastating. We want to help the public. But when you go into some of these places, we don't know if there's fentanyl that's airborne that can contaminate our officers. They can become overdosed with it by contact, by it being airborne. They also are at danger of getting stuck with hypodermic apparatus from known IV drug users. I'm repeating what I said the other night at the select board when we ratified our contract. Route 1 out here is a major drug corridor for drugs going east and north and weapons going south. We don't know who we're stopping out there half the time. Don't know what you're going to come into contact with. You do a vehicle search, you find drugs in it. We had officers who in Camden handled an unattended death 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and get a call from the ME's office to tell those officers to watch for fentanyl exposure because the person had died from fentanyl. It's scary. And those are some of the things that we're dealing with. Mental health is always on the forefront. We've had some great help with VOA in some of those instances, and with VOA assisting with general assistance and whatnot. These are, don't get me wrong, these are still really, really safe communities. I routinely have people call me that want to relocate here, and they say, well, what should I worry about? I said, well, it's still one of the areas you can leave the keys in your car about 99 out of 100 nights. On the 100th, somebody might take it for a joyride, but we usually recover them the next morning somewhere. It is still safe, but anything that can happen anywhere else can happen here. We have intel all the time on people that are coming here from out of state that are affiliated with major drug gangs. You're seeing it all over the state, people getting stopped. Down East Maine is rampant with drugs. Those drugs aren't usually going I-95, they're usually going back roads to get there. So we have the potential of coming into contact. fair number of times our officers have responded to overdose, and we have, I was with Travis Ford at an overdose here not too long ago, and I can tell you that that person was, for all intents and purposes, dead. They were purple. Travis Narcaned him. He made a gasp, stopped breathing again. I said, Travis, give him another dose of Narcan. And he hit him with a second dose of Narcan, and he came up off the floor so quick. And the first thing he says, I'm all right, I don't need you here. And it was that quick, scary quick. And you got to be on your toes. Those are the things that we're dealing with. Yes, sir.
Moving on from the donuts.
No, you had your question done.
Yeah, right. We should give Steve a chance to
It's
talk.
hard to believe, and to get my head around that having two departments, Camden and Rockport, is somehow more efficient than if we had one chief, two lieutenants, and 16 patrol officers all working together. And I know people talk about this.
This is what this study did, Doug.
Yeah.
And it did say, and I showed it to John today, that basically if you were looking for it to be, I can't remember exactly how it's worded, but I can get it for you. It's not a money saver.
Yeah.
And that was back in 2008.
2008?
2008 is when
Well,
that
that
study
was
was
then.
done. Yep, that was then.
That's not 2025.
You could have
right?
combined a police department back then for 1.235 million. You're gonna do that now.
Well, you're not going to convince me tonight because, you know, if you look around what
Doug,
happened-
honestly, it's definitely something that needs to be looked at. And I'm all for looking at that. I just think, and I'm not gonna speak for the boards, but there are other instances that still haven't been resolved that the towns probably wanna do before taking on a project like that.
Right, but what I would contend is that if you called the chief A and had two Bs and a bunch of Cs and got all of the personalities out of it, and by that I mean boards, chiefs, select boards, you could come up on a piece of paper of a better system than what we have.
So, yeah, you could. The problem is you've got two police unions you have to deal with.
Yeah.
So that's one step.
So
The other
two
was-
different police
yeah,
unions.
So, and they're not the same union, they're two separate. So you've got to deal with that fact. And they found that in this report. They also found that, lost my train of thought there for a minute. So it was the two unions was one of the things that, and then basically with this report, Rockport would be giving up and seceding to Camden to contract police services. Mark Kelly was going to be one of the lieutenants, and I was going to be one of the other lieutenants. So if you, hypothetically, if you dissolve one department and you contract with another, it's kind of like the dispatch situation that we're in now with the county. You lose a lot of say, because if you've been following the dispatch saga, Jason and I have been living it. We have had times that we didn't know if the dispatch center was going to be open or not. And we have very little say. They have a dispatch advisory board, but it's advisory. They have no voting powers. Am I correct in that, Jason? Correct. They have no voting powers. So if that's the model you wanted to do and you wanted to dissolve one and join the other, you're basically contracting your services over to that one. Doug, I could make this happen tomorrow. This is so easy to me, it's not even funny. The problem is, you've got to figure out the issue around the fact that Rockport PD, now, when this report was done in the contract for the town of Rockport's police department, basically it said that you couldn't allow consolidation, and that was in a union contract.
Well, what I would do is I'd get rid of both unions and I'd find a third one to start.
Yeah, I mean, that's the,
I don't want to take up too much
no, and that's the
time.
tricky
No, and I
waters.
think that is something, I've been making these notes as we go along.
That's the tricky
of
water
things
you gotta
we will work
navigate
on
in
this
something
year.
like that, is now, what happens with your Rockport staff? And I can tell you right now, just this conversation tonight is gonna cause stir that this is even being discussed, and somebody may jump ship tomorrow because they don't want to go through that. So, and those are the chances you take, but these are the things that you got to talk about.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was gonna, I'm sorry we're being predictable. You brought the report because you knew the conversation would come up, but, I mean,
I've done this
I really
a lot of
appreciate the
times.
background. That was super helpful.
Yep.
But almost every problem that you laid out, I was thinking to myself, with a department of this size, aren't those problems that we're just gonna deal with in perpetuity? Even if we were able to add another police officer, you're still struggling to recruit, you're struggling to retain.
This is
You
gonna be a
don't have
long-
time to do investigations, you have staffing issues and moving people around. I'm wondering what it's gonna take to move, we don't need to name names, so I mean, off the record, I'd love to get some sense of like, who needs to take what action to move this discussion forward, because I have to think Camden's dealing with the same thing, we're competing against each other.
We had one board
To
member
attract
say that they
people.
were interested in looking into this.
Say that again?
I had a board member the other night mention that they were interested in
Okay.
looking into this.
Yeah, and I ran
So,
into some board
and I think
members
it's
over the
something.
weekend who want to.
And I'm looking
I'm not
at 8
kidding you.
retirements
You-
in 3 to 5
You
years.
we may end up at that point where it happens because it has to happen.
And
So it might be
what
that
would
much
worry
easier.
me is taking that proposal that was written by people, most of whom were not here anymore, and saying, well, that's how we're gonna go. But I don't see how, with what the challenges that you laid out in the 3 to 5 year window, with retirements and the kind of criminal behavior we're seeing and what that's trending like, I just don't see how we can sustain the kind of service to the community without doing something meaningful to get these departments.
So one of the things it would do, if we were to add that extra position this year,
Yeah.
is we would have overlapping shift coverage, which we can go from a reactive mode to a more proactive mode. We've gone into the reactive mode since COVID, because COVID shut us down. We couldn't do anything. They didn't want us stopping cars. They didn't want us doing this, that, or the other. So we've got into this, and then after COVID, we start getting all these losses in employees in both departments. And you've got people that are just working so much that the burnout is there. Now, the other thing that has changed is, Chris and I came up through where the department was first, your family was second. And your family understood that at any time, it could be opening the Christmas presents. If you get called out, you gotta go. And as much as I hate to say it, I take my hat off to these young officers now that are saying, the job is second, my family's first. And we have to get into a model of thinking, we've got to have the coverage so that we can make this department a better place, so that our officers can have quality of life, and they're not worrying every day when they know they're on their 4-day break that they're going to get called back in for overtime. Because that's what lost us a very good officer, and I don't blame them a bit. So to be able to have that ability, the officers have worked out great with their new schedule. I have them come in and shift changes at 5:30 in the morning. That means the officer going out at 6, at 5:30, they don't have to take any more calls. The incoming officer does. The next hour of their shift, I let the officers, they can flex. We give them time to work out. We give them time to do other stuff. Now, if it's snowing like it is, and we got traffic accidents backing up, they stay right there until the last gun's fired. But I think we see the quality of life improving for the officers because we have that staffing. And that last position, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you, we can't make it work if we don't have it, because I understand the budget constraints. But I'm telling you, we may be, I wanna say we're gonna be a premier agency that is, now that we've got a blueprint in place, a schedule that's good, the fact that we're gonna have enough people so there's overlapping shift coverage, I think it takes some of that anxiety down. Oh my God, what are we gonna do? I'll be honest with you, I don't know when I'll retire. My wife says I'm gonna be working a lot longer than she is, but I got 37 years in. I still love this job. Even 95% of my days, even on the bad ones, it still far outweighs a job that you hate. And if you love something, Chris got out of that. He went to work as an investigator with the state. That itch to be a law enforcement officer is there, because when you retire, it doesn't matter if you were the best cop out there. You're outside what's called the circle of safety. And this class that they sent me to, FBI class, I got the jacket here, they teach you about that. Because when you retire, and it's not just police, it's fire, you're outside that circle. And cops don't like to be outside that circle. That's why they stay, or they die 4 years after they retire. because they're so used to living that lifestyle. That's what we want to get to a point in this department, where there's quality of life, there's quality of work, and because when you put all those things together, that's a very successful police department, where the stress level is down and things like that. But definitely, yeah, I hear you.
Even those pieces
Yep.
would still be easier to build in a bigger department
Yep.
with more flexibility, more staff, more chances. And you're right, the culture is the key thing. There's no question about that. No organizational work or shifting is going to,
Culture is, but I've lived in this area my whole life, and there is still, I thought it would be gone by now, there is still individual pride in the town you live in, and you pay taxes, and you want to see your police officers, and you want to see your fire department, and you want to see your ambulance service. That lady down there knows what I'm talking about. That town manager knows, because we're lifelong residents. My father, I was in Camden when I went to Rockport police card. Rockport, I want to see that. That's what I pay taxes for. And that's why when I came in, I don't usually wear a uniform because I want to be more neutral between the ranks. When I do suit up, I got a patch for each department because I represent both. Will it happen? There's a lot of strong personalities out there that would be against. There's probably a lot of new that would want it. That's what they found out in this report, that when they got it all said and done. But the price of doing business is getting so great that you have to be creative.
quality of
And I would
life.
love to have you come in anytime, and I'll take you for a ride in my cop car, and we'll go have a coffee, and I'll talk to you.
Sign me up. Doing it on
I could
Friday.
talk the ears off a deaf person.
I think, I'm surprised I'm going to sit up here and do what Steve used to do for Public Works. Let me tell you some history. But I think this body could use a glimpse into the fact that personalities are really just as important as every single thing else in the matrix. And you're working to put hours together, you're doing the physicality of bodies where they are. But personality is huge, and it took us 10 years prior to the start of that report to even consider it because of the way the personalities had to merge. Otherwise, there was such a apparent vote of a negative vote against the status quo, and it wasn't until certain things fell into place. And it's important for us to recognize that. It's just, we happen to be a bunch of humans as opposed to boxes on a piece of paper.
That's a failure of leadership, Jeff.
I'll go a quarter of the way with you on that, but I think it's 75%. Personalities, I mean, it's such a small group of people in the area, in the state, that are willing, that have the training and are willing to take this on, and they're going to have personalities. And you can have the most dynamic leader, and they'll walk. I mean, right now, the whole thing we're talking about is the fact that it was so volatile. Well, there's no market at all that you had to give these $30,000 awards. To me, from a financial position, that means if you don't pay attention to personalities, the best of the leaders still may have nothing to work with when people walk out the door.
Right. What I've learned tonight is it's not an efficiency argument. It's not
Not gonna
an
save
efficiency
money.
argument. It's about building a sustainable
Sure.
police force that can attract and retain really, really good people. And are there going to be financial savings? Maybe. And I haven't read the report. I don't know whether that was kind of the focus. But I have to think that some type of effort is actually going to be better for your people than not. That's one of my takeaways from tonight, just listening to what you've had to go through for the last year.
I can tell you, whoever comes up with a solution to this problem is going to be rich, because it's not just here.
Oh, I
You look at the
appreciate that.
small police departments that have actually closed down
Yeah.
in northern Maine,
Yeah.
because you just can't attract the people. And I think it's going to be very difficult into the future, because we are an aging population around here. And when you can't afford a house because what's happening is when you get outside, I have officers that probably drive by 4 or 5 police departments to get to work. And when the billboards go up, one of the things we compete with is the sheriff's department. You know what
Yep.
they give you the first day? A car, a take-home car,
What kind of car?
a police car.
We got to the county assessment yet? Did we look at the county assessment?
I know, let's go back to that.
But we could never pull that
Well,
off.
that's what I think triggered some of this, is back when the sheriff's office had all the ARPA money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they raised everybody's rates in terms of paying, and we were,
I mean,
they
there's
sort of poached all
gotta
of
be
our
an end.
officers.
One good thing that Camden just signed their contract, but wage-wise, we have an opener every January of the 3 years of the contract. So that will put Rockport negotiating a contract next year. Camden will be, so we can kind of see where the wages are going. But I've had 2 chiefs call me already that want a copy of our new Camden contract because they're going into contract negotiations and they probably want to beat what we're paying.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening, is who can come up with the best plan to attract the next bunch? You can't blame people. I mean, you can only get so much money thrown at you. I'll give you a fine example, and I don't think I'm speaking out of school. They're paying detail rate for police officers to sit in the dispatch center right now. Do you know what detail rate is? $80 an hour to sit in the dispatch because they can't get enough dispatchers.
Yeah.
Tell me that doesn't get attractive. Now, is that going to go on for the foreseeable future? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I got officers that aren't getting overtime here that are going down there
They're
to
going
work
down
and make
there.
money. So that's the complexity of it.
Yeah.
And I just, to go back to the dispatch situation that's occurred, there's a lot of theoretical conversations and a lot of, we can model it in a report like that. But in the time, so the genesis of that report came from a board that Jeff and I served on, and the conversation, I think I mentioned it earlier last time about, there was some talk on a Rockport Select Board at that time of contracting with the county and closing the police department and so forth. And eventually turned into a report that looked like that. My only sort of flag that I'm waving is through this, and there's a lot of great conversation, and I think everyone here is trying to push the ball in one direction, which is in a positive one. The trick that we have to do, and the things that people in my position and the board and all of us here, is we have to make sure that we don't let the theoretical get in the way of the practical. And what we saw with the dispatch center, and what is occurring with the dispatch center still, is such a concerning situation that it just can't be underlined enough. It can't be highlighted enough. There isn't a big enough font to print it in. And there's a lot of good work that's trying to go in to keep things afloat and allow us all that when we see an issue and go 911, it goes right where we thought it should. But the idea that we're even having that conversation, like that maybe that might not happen, is completely bananas. And it's, that's sort of the safety net that is public safety, right? You can't play with it. You've got to make sure that it is secure and that we feel as though that all of us, the 3,700 of us that live here, feel secure. Now, we can't put a cop on every corner. You can't put an ambulance at the end of every street. That's not fiscally responsible on any level. But somehow we've got to make sure that that safety net's there for all of us to catch. And, not to, we could throw more at the county. I'm not going to do more, but that, to me, that is the example that as we talk about all of these issues tonight, that it can look good in a budget meeting, to get to a point, but then what's the outcome? Where does it go? Is it administered properly? Are the people up there trying to ensure that they're also pushing that ball in the right direction? And unfortunately, what we've seen with the dispatch center is one that's really discouraging on a whole bunch of levels. And Chief Gagne and I and have been working really hard on this matter with this department. We had the idea that we had someone working 100 hours to make sure that the calls were there. The board was in the middle of the discussions with the folks on Ben Paul Lane and the concerns there. We were in the middle of that issue. We couldn't talk about that because it's personnel and all that goes with it. But the ability for the people in our department to go above and beyond is just, it goes without saying how much we couldn't do this without them. And they've been doing that over and over and over again. And these last few years, we have literally a handful of people, sometimes less than a handful of people, to fill all these shifts. And I'm really appreciative to the group last year that added the position that ultimately ended up becoming Lieutenant Young's spot, and what that's added to our team. But it can be easy to focus on the studies. It can be focused on, where that could be, but the ability for us to not lose sight of don't let dispatch happen again is sort of what rings in my mind every time we talk about what's next and where it goes. And that's culture, that's building something sustainable, that's building something that can last. And that's, you're always gonna lose people, you're gonna gain people. That's the give and take of it all. We all understand that. But the sustainability of it, and we had reached that point this fall where we were in a crisis. So this has been a tough year for this budget, and I appreciate, again, the tenor of this conversation, because there's a reason to look at these numbers and be frightened, but the reality of the situation is we all want what's best for the town, and we see a bigger picture. So I just appreciate that.
John?
So Randy, I appreciate everything you said, and I have a super appreciation for everything you do in the whole force. What if we met in the middle on this and, budgeted for, it's a big increase by itself, even without the additional officer for the budget. It's already at, 22% increase year over year, because we're having to absorb, the effect of last year. Could you think about a scenario? How long does it take you, first of all, to find someone? And I know you say it depends, and who knows. But I'm just thinking, well, what if we put that new position in, say, mid-year next year?
I think realistically, I could have somebody tomorrow for it right now. That might not be there. I think if they knew that position was coming up, we could hold them off till July, but I have a very good candidate that wouldn't cost the town to send them to the academy and whatnot, who's expressed interest if a position was to come open. That might not be, it's a luck of the draw, John, to tell you the truth, because we're not the only ones that are still actively looking just in case. Everybody else is. And, money's king right now, so anything would be better than not. Whatever you come up with for a suggestion is what we'll take, and I think it's probably easier to recruit during the summer months. But, we got 3 in 3 weeks, which is unheard of. That those wells might dry up in that candidate pool. When I applied back in 1988, there was 75 people for 4 positions. I don't think I've had 15 people in the last 5 years, it seems, that because they're just not there.
Well, and one thought is we really just finally staffed up to the baseline level, and maybe we let that settle a little bit, and it is a big lift already for our residents. It's what we approved last year, but not at the rates that we ended up having to approve.
Sure.
So just throw that out there, that we've absorbed
Oh,
a
and I
lot already
totally
for
get
our
it.
taxpayers.
If you
Yeah.
said, no, we're not doing this year, Chris and I and Jim
Yeah,
and
not that we
everybody,
haven't
we're gonna-
heard what you've
we're gonna make
said
it
and
work.
how important
We'd just
that-
like to get it, so we've got a little on the bench there.
Yeah.
Because I anticipate at least one vacancy, and it's just based on history. Everything is going good right now, but who knows what the next offer is? That's the world we live in.
Right. Anything else for
On-
go ahead,
On that
Walker.
theme, I was just wanting to confirm that the 792, that is for a full year of new hires' wages, okay?
Yeah, 12.
And the cost of living increase, that's a full year of 2.5%, and is that?
The union's wages are contractual.
Right.
So whatever
It
they,
is 2.5%, but we're making up for a mid-year contract increase of $4 per hour for each position.
Right.
So it's more than.
And so there's $4 plus the 2.5%,
Right.
is that? And that
Plus-
has to take effect June?
Correct.
July 1.
Right.
Okay.
Plus, we have so many new employees that they will also get step increases based on their employment date.
One other question I had is I see there's about $1,300 of ticket revenue scheduled in at the bottom, and I do happen to know there's a lot of speeding in the village and such. Is there any
We don't
scope to
get any
increase that?
money for speeding tickets, traffic court, that would be parking tickets.
Is there scope to increase that some, or,
If the
I mean,
if the board desired, we could put $30, $50, whatever you want on a ticket, but then you want to scare your visitors off with a $50 ticket. Nothing
I
is
don't know, I
worse.
saw Camden has $50,000 in parking ticket revenue.
I'd be in violation right now.
We all would be.
Well, not us. I mean,
For everybody else.
but so the speeding
Randy and
revenue you
Chris
don't
are
get
in
just
here.
so I don't-
No.
Out of
no,
state-
no.
out of
All
state
that goes
plates
through the Maine Violations Bureau.
I see,
General fund type money.
alas.
Yeah.
Okay.
We can issue
So just
tickets,
also,
we
just
don't
on
get
the
anything.
vehicles, the cruiser purchase, we're, for 50 grand on that line item is gonna cover the cost of cruiser 69.
Correct.
We're going to be replacing 23, what is it, 2395?
24.
2495.
And then the 40 that we're putting into reserve, offset by 20, so we're net adding to the reserve by 20 is just to help get us back onto replacement schedule.
We bought 2 cruisers one year, and you never want to do that, so we're putting the miles to 1 cruiser right now. So we want to try to replace that and hold off as long into next year as we can. The problem is we don't know what the effects of tariffs are going to be on these vehicles. There's one sitting on the lot I could buy for 45 right now, but I don't know if that vehicle will be available, and I don't know what the price increase is going to be. And a lot of the incentives from Ford and Chrysler, they're not happening anymore.
So the replacement schedule is maybe not quite up to date.
I think what we've done is because we have the 2 vehicles, we've just taken the one that we know that we want to replace out of those 2 that was similar mileage, and we're going to run that up, so it would just be replacing that one, changing license plate numbers. basically.
Okay, so we're still planning on replacing cruiser 69 this year, SUV next year, 70 year after. And that's it. So we're gonna get on, we're still on the
We
3-year
just
schedule.
replaced 69. That was in this money we had this year. That's a new vehicle now.
Okay.
2495 will be the one that goes next.
And that's 70 or that's SUV?
That's it.
SUV.
Okay.
This says 69 is in 25, 26.
Yeah, I think
And the values aren't matching, which is fine.
vehicle just needs to be updated.
But as
Okay.
long as we're still projecting using the reserve like we are here,
Yep.
because everyone got upset at me about doing this on highways setup. And here we are, and
Got
no one
upset at
said
you?
us-
I can't imagine.
Yeah, shocker. But now we're basically contributing more to a reserve, which I like, by the way, so that we can buy them in cash.
Correct.
No one can be upset with you, Clay.
That's
Not true.
That's not true.
So,
I got big shoulders though. so
actually,
I'm
I
all right.
have a question about the vehicle replacement schedule. Is it realistic, Randy, to think that we're going to be able to purchase a cruiser for $45,000 in 2035?
Probably not.
Okay, some of these numbers just seem like, they're not accounting for what we're seeing in price.
Well, I didn't think they'd be 45 this year because I'd been spending 34 for like the last 10 years for them. But COVID and all of those other things have made them go through the roof. And the incentives on a lot, we used to get pretty good incentives from Ford. $7,000 they take off a municipal fleet purchase. You're not seeing those things anymore. So those may go back into effect at some point, so we may have to change those numbers up some. And the setup on vehicles went from 10,000, one cruiser, to 20,000 the next. And that's just because of the price of the parts and labor and all that, everything doubled.
Anything else for Randy? I know we need to get on to animal control. That's a
That
barn
one won't
burner of
take
an
long at
issue.
all.
That's good,
Can we
'cause we're-
regionalize animal control?
page
Send
199.
that to Camden.
199.
Is there a report? Did you look at regionalizing?
You know, you start small and you never know what you're gonna come up with.
It's gonna win.
Animal control could eat the police department. Anybody have anything they want to ask or understand about animal control?
So most of that is a contractual service through PAWS, and they give us an annual fee, and they're the only show in town, so.
And that's going up this year.
Yep.
Where do the revenues come from with animal control?
Dog licensing?
Oh,
And then the people pay, when they have to go recover their animal, that money goes to PAWS, not back to us? Or does it come, some of it
Yeah.
come to us?
No.
None of it goes to us? Okay.
If someone gets a ticket for like dog roaming at large, does that go to the state?
The state sends us a portion of it back. It
Okay.
originally goes to the state, and then we get
And then
like
you get a-
$5 of it back.
Oh, okay.
State's not gonna lose their money,
No.
yeah.
Okay.
So the animal control fees are those, when we license animals at the town office,
It all
that
goes
money?
into animal control fees.
Okay.
So the
it's a whole
licensing
mix of-
and the state reimbursement.
And do we only get a portion of the licensing as well? Does that go to the
Correct.
state and we get a portion back?
So we could save some money if we just shot the dog?
Dog.
Really?
Personnel complaints might go up
Making
at that
friends
point.
everywhere. Making friends
Oh,
everywhere.
dog.
Well,
Go somewhere else.
okay.
Well, refrain
All
from
right, I
answering
don't think
that
we
one.
have anything more to
I
say
think
about
we're
animal
good about that.
control.
Doug sealed that deal.
Yeah, let's move on. All right, Public Safety Building, 295. And I guess that's both Chief Gagnon and Chief Peasley.
Come on up,
Okay.
we've been waiting for you, buddy.
Come on up.
Make some room for Jason.
How are you?
So the public safety building is another of our buildings that are under review and going to be under review. We have some testing for lead, mold, radon, asbestos, all of that good stuff, and that will be coming out fairly soon, so we'll be able to report more on that. You know, this is a building that is 60-plus years old. It shows its age. It's been, I think, well maintained. Jason has been the head keeper of that spot since Bruce Woodward retired, and Bruce actually, he was fire chief / he also was in charge of maintenance in that space for ever and a day as well. So, you know, there's obviously some changes in that space in part. With the new West Rockport Fire Station, there'll be some shifts, but there always will be a strong fire presence in the village. And so
Thank you.
that will remain the case in that building regardless. But obviously, for anybody who's driven by the public safety building on a night like this, actually, when the cruiser's outside running because the officer who's on duty needs to be able to get to where they need to go, they need to keep the car, that cruiser running the entire time because, you know, the snow's piling up and you need to be able to go where you need to go.
Thanks,
Bye, Chris.
Thank you.
Good night, thank you.
Have a good night, everyone.
See you later.
Want him to get back to work.
Yeah.
That's right, please. So, you know, the ability to have one more bay that's available for the cruiser, or a cruiser to park in while they're on duty is a really, you know, big step. But at the same time, for those of you who do remember, that used to be fire station, town office, all in one. And the needs of a police department, let alone a fire department, are a lot different in 2025 than they are in 1965. So all of that is going to be looked at. Again, that's information they'll get back to the board at some point this summer. And, you know, there'll be a larger conversation about all these, you know, where all these buildings stand, both in terms of condition and future need. But this budget is really about keeping the fires burning and keeping the building going as is, without any sort of significant change to how it operates, by and large. So.
John, I just had a
John.
question about the internet service. Is this just to get the internet set up at the West Rockport station?
Are you on
Am I looking at the
I
right?
think you're
Public
looking at the wrong one.
Safety Building, page
297.
297? We haven't gotten to the West Rockport Fire Station yet.
All right, so 297, okay.
297.
All right, that's not part of the.
I'll answer that question at 8:30, John.
Yeah.
Not a minute
Not a
later.
minute sooner, unless we're
All right.
ahead of schedule.
All right, I'm sorry, I'm
But yes,
not realizing these were separate, so ignore what I just said.
Yeah.
good question, though. It's expensive.
John,
Hey,
Helen.
this new door, 5415, is that a new door or a replacement door for one that's already there?
Do you want to talk about that, Jason?
It's a replacement door, so when you walk into the police department, the first door is open still at all times. It goes to the med box. The next door is a hollow door. That is a secured facility going in, so they're gonna put a metal door in. Now that front door was never accessible for the public to drop meds. Now that is accessible, they have full access into the PD. The door is literally a hollow door, so someone could break in. There's evidence in there, there's guns, so they're putting a secure metal door in there.
Okay, thank you.
Where is that?
Any other questions? Okay. Next is Emergency Medical Service, 187.
187?
187.
Boy, and that's it for
See you later, Randy.
Chief
for you.
Gagney.
Jason, I'd stay here and watch you take your licks if you'd like. You say I didn't say I wouldn't.
He'd take some while anyways, don't you worry.
From his own people.
Truth.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
for
very
giving me
much.
the time to talk. Hopefully we'll see you all again next year. I think so.
Bring the donut.
Okay, well, this is obviously an item with,
Fraught.
yeah, it's a difficult
It's a
number.
new one for us to get used to.
That's right. And so, as I mentioned in my overview, the biggest change here is the fact that this is a full year of budgeting for the full-time medic, the 4 full-time medics that we hired in the fall, as well as the 2 additional AEMT and firefighters. So, so a total of 6 net employees. That's salaries and benefits for a full year, as opposed to the 8 months we had them budgeted previously. So that's off the top. Obviously the biggest change, and obviously expenditures are where that change is noted mostly. Revenues are really where the challenge comes in for all of us here. We had hoped, and I had mentioned this the other night, we had hoped that by this point we would have had our, had sort of run through our paces by this point, that the building was up and running, that we were, operating and transporting and thus able to receive revenue. And in a handful of cases we have, but by and large, that service will really begin full-throated on, a week from tomorrow. So, April Fool's Day, that's not meant to be
That's not
yeah.
an omen.
It's not an omen.
But this is really an opportunity, and this is a new venture for the town. It's not something that municipalities are uncommon, but it's uncommon in our area. And it's an uncommon thing in our town. So it requires careful attention, policy work, a lot of training, a lot of study. Chief Peasley's been working on this issue intensely, I would say, for the last 18 months. So he and his crew are ready to jump on and take on the next challenge next week. But it is still something new. So I'll divulge that before, the week before we unleash this, Chief and I had a long conversation about, are we ready for other avenues of revenue? Are we ready to go out and go further? And we talked long and hard about that issue. And, where I came down on it is a place where this was a service that was launched to focus predominantly on Rockport and Rockport's residents. And if we do nothing else than provide quality care to Rockport's residents, if we haven't done that first, before we do other things, we haven't done right by those we've asked to fund this service. That's why I've come down on this the way I have, why my budget looks the way it looks. And Chief, and I talked about this, and he talked with his crew about, are we ready? Can we do more? Can we stretch from where we are now? And, I mean, I'll let him certainly, answer that part of the question himself, but the response I got and the crew is like, not yet. I think there are avenues and there's a lot of opportunities. He and I spent this afternoon talking about, a handful of them that are pretty low-hanging fruit, I think, in allowing us to get there. But it would be, in my opinion, it'd be premature to include them in a budget here or to bring them forward in any way to the select board to say, this is a fee schedule, this is the way we want to go to do that. So at this point, I believe the best step forward is for us to operate with what we have here, these proposed revenues using some historical data of what other communities our size have looked at, looking at some revenues that there's trust funds that we are going to be working with over the next year within the town that will help to work to reduce some medical costs for those who are unable to pay for ambulance services. And I think in light of all of those things, that's why this budget looks the way it does. One quick thing, and I'll stop talking about this. Certainly there are other agencies that are working. Camden, Lincolnville, and Hope have sort of refined their effort, and they're taking a different approach than the approach that they had taken with the 4 communities when they were together. We certainly wish them well. I mean, they're a successful EMS operation everywhere around us is successful for us as well. So it doesn't in any way limit, it only strengthens, in fact, what we can do and how we can assist them and they can assist us. I still regret and wish that their efforts were more aligned with ours, but I think that's water over the dam at this point. And we're now in a new world where we're able to provide an ambulance and provide a great bit of mutual aid care, and we can assist where needed across town lines, whether that's north or south. And Chief will talk a little bit more about some of the work that's being done with the city of Rockland to sort of tighten those bounds. But I think that this is the beginning of a story. This isn't the end of a story. It's not even the middle of a story. And I think that there is a lot of work and a lot of change that's still to go on. The other thing I would just maybe mention from my seat, if the question does come up, there is a lot of change that's going on in the state. And the move towards municipally based fire and EMS is not a wave that's only impacting Rockport. There's 13 other municipalities that have done this before us, like 12 or 13. So we are not alone. We're not on an island. It can feel that way because we are Rockport. This is our budget. But this is the trend. This is where this move is coming from. And it's coming from a fact that for-profit agencies, like the one that has served us, are not the wave of the future. And the reimbursements they are receiving are shrinking. Their market is shrinking, and they're passing the cost to operate on to the municipalities they're contracting with. That's been the story of Rockport and Northeast Ambulance, Northeast Mobile Health Services in the last 11 years. A 3,000% increase over the last 11 years. So when looked in totality, no doubt this is a tough number, it's a tough budget. But in the line of bigger trends that are going on around us, I believe we're escaping what could be a worse crash in a situation where a service that we rely upon, not unlike we're talking about with dispatch, sometimes isn't as reliable as we want it to be. And those are the hard decisions that, those of us who are in leadership have to confront, and making that cost-benefit analysis of how do you do that, and how do you do that for a community like ours, of our size. So, anyway, this is, as I said, this is a tough number, but it's a representative of really a continuation of the same policies that have occurred that started in the last budget cycle and are really completing in this budget cycle, yet without the opportunity to really branch out and find other avenues to lessen the tax burden. And I think next year, when this conversation comes up, this budget will look quite a bit differently.
And I guess I'd just say before we, that nothing prevents us, I think, even over the next year, from finding some of those other sources of revenue, just because it's not built into the budget.
Exactly.
We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We want to make sure we've got this service up and running and in a way that works. But if in 6 or 7 months it's like going strong, and we've got neighboring communities that are interested in coming to us for ambulance assistance, that's definitely something that we can all consider, but we just can't know that today.
Can we hear from Jason?
Sure.
Jason, you want to hear from? Oh, be sorry what you asked.
I would just like to, how's it going, and how's this budget?
John stole most of the win, but so we started full-time live December 15th with 24/7 shifts. So we have a firefighter, EMT or AMT, and a paramedic on from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. For the first 2.5 months, they lived in the camper next to the fire station through the winter. We have responded to every single EMS call in the town of Rockport with Northeast Mobile Health. If they were not there within a certain time frame or only had one provider, then we would provide transport, or if they were unavailable, we'd provide transport. We've been called to several other towns. We've gone to Rockland on many occasions to back them up and complete transports. We've gone to Union for paramedic intercepts. I think we've gone to Camden a few times to back up Northeast down there if they're not available. The staff that we hired, for those that weren't involved, we hired 4 paramedics. As Randy said, staffing fire, police, EMS is not easy. We were very fortunate. We ended up hiring 4 paramedics with over 55 years of experience. I got a husband-wife duo from Fall River, Mass. He was the EMS chief down there, running 26,600 calls a year with 93 EMT paramedics. His wife was a paramedic captain down there. They have been instrumental in the startup with this and their knowledge. Corey Bonnevie came from Raleigh, North Carolina on a high-end rescue paramedic team down there. He started as a paramedic, I think he said when he was 17, he was the youngest ever. He is our paramedic supervisor. And then Jen Harden, who's a newer paramedic. However, she works up in Lewiston for United. She was one of the very first paramedics involved in the shooting. She's been involved in, well, if you see the news, you see what happens in Lewiston. The team that we put together is meshed incredibly well. We have received a large amount of praise from people in our community as well as the others with how professional, trained, and educated they are compared to what they have been experiencing. We're very fortunate. We're already over 154 calls year to date. I don't have the numbers for what we did in December for that short time. Now that we're in the new station, things are obviously much smoother with their sleeping arrangements. They have their own office space. They have a kitchen now. They actually have a kitchen table that's not sitting next to the fire truck. They have a supply closet. Things are going very well over there. So overall, in my opinion, we're at an A+ for what we're doing. As John mentioned, Tuesday morning at 7 a.m., the crew that comes on, the PUC, which is the state that regulates dispatch, as well as dispatch, is switching Rockport Fire to primary, which means when you dial 911 in Rockport, Rockport Fire will be the department and the only department toned. So we will take over full responsibility of EMS in this area for the town of Rockport. It's been a long 3-year process to get here. John can attest that for the whole month of October, November, December, going in front of the main EMS board on multiple occasions, trying to work with Northeast to relinquish 911, it's been a battle, but we got there. We've had huge support from Rockland Fire Chief, Chris Wytalk, who's helped put a lot of this together, Joe Moore, who put the entire program together, Waldoboro, Belfast chiefs who've been instrumental in providing us everything that we have. We're very fortunate that that many communities are willing to step up and help us to get to where we are. As John mentioned, 13 communities in just over 2 years have switched from private to municipality-based fire EMS. Delta, one of the largest in the state, is lost most of their contracts in central Maine. Winslow, Waterville, all these areas are switching to municipality because of the same reasons that we're experiencing here, with significant delay in response times, the level of service, the professionalism, and the significant cost increases. The 3,000% John gave is the number before all the recent increases. I don't know what the number would be if we were, I don't know what the number would have been if we had stayed with it, but it would have been much more than that. The total contract started at $36,000 11 years ago, and it's going to be well over $1 million now for just 3 towns. The contracts that Northeast had is what they offset our rates, and that's what their leadership came to us every year, all 4 towns. That's what offsets the price for you. They lost Maine Med, they lost Pembay, and from my understanding, from what Togus has indicated, they're going to be losing a Togus contract in April of 2026 of $1.4 million. So that cost is going to have to go to somebody, and that would have been us. I feel, I may not be a taxpayer here, but I can assure you if I could move here and find the right place with 3 dogs, I would be doing it. I've been trying for years. Even if I lived here, I would still be doing exactly what we're doing. I think what we're doing is absolutely what's best for the taxpayers in this town. I've had multiple people write letters to the Maine EMS board that had to wait 32 minutes for their daughter that fell and hit their head and went unconscious for an ambulance to arrive. We've had to wait 25 minutes for an ambulance at the intersection with a life flight ambulance with a critical patient that was on life support for an ambulance to arrive. And I'm sorry, I don't feel that that's what the taxpayers here deserve. So I feel where we're at, what we're doing is absolutely the right decision. To Randy's point, we're very fortunate for the staff that we have. We are like a homeowner's insurance policy or car insurance. We charge stupid premiums. You may never need us, but when you need us here in Rockport, I absolutely promise you, you're going to get the best of the best in this area.
So, questions? We open to questions?
Yeah.
Okay. Just up in the front, maybe this is John, maybe this is you, Jason. There's some reference to 2024 with 176 EMS calls. Are those Northeast ambulance numbers? Is that
Yes.
where you're getting those from? Okay. And so you've got all the data from Northeast to compare our service to their service. What kind of metrics do they give you in their reports? I mean, do they give you like response times? Do they give you, from the time they leave the station to whatever?
That's one of the issues that we had with the reporting for years. It was an issue that Camden, we all had during the quarterly meetings, the reports that they create. They're not the 911 numbers that are entered through a computer, it's what they enter. A lot of times there was stuff missed in those reports from mutual aid responses. So the numbers that I got from them, 2023, they responded to Rockport 598 times. I have not got the numbers for this last year. So I don't know what their response times are. I haven't reached out. I haven't looked into their numbers.
So it's going to take you a while to kind of get everything dialed in. At some point, you're going to want to look at your own scorecard, I presume.
Absolutely.
And so do you have like 3 or 4 metrics or 3 or 4 things that you track that you would look to determine are you hitting the goal that you want as the fire and EMS? I guess, are you the EMS chief?
He's both. Well, no, he's not EMS.
Are you the EMS chief?
Theoretically, yes.
Okay. So as the EMS chief, how would you know if you're hitting the numbers you want?
Well, Tuesday's our start date. So Tuesday's really theoretically day 1. We don't have response times really for us now because we have response times, but we don't have transport. We don't have time from when the call came in to when we drop off at Pembay because
I
we're not
realize
doing
none of
that.
this information exists now, but the data does exist nationwide, because I assume all
Yep.
EMS services have some level of, so I'm just curious, I'm not looking for a number, I'm just kind of wanting to know what numbers will you be paying attention to?
So my number one is our response times. I feel that's been a major issue in all 4 communities for years. It's been brought up not only by our community, but Camden as well for years. There's been a significant delay in response times. That is, for me, number one. Professionalism, I call it customer service, is number 2. You as a taxpayer should be getting absolute top-notch customer service when you need someone there. I want our people to be professional, courteous. I want to make sure they're properly trained and that they're giving you the service that you need. So those are the 2 biggest things that we're going to be looking
How
at.
do you measure that? Is there a measurement for that today, or
kind
just
of to what-
complaints? I mean,
Kind of to like Chief
Okay.
Gagny said is,
Yep.
you know, if we're not getting complaints,
There you
then
go.
we're doing
Okay.
a really good job.
Okay.
We've actually received a few phone calls and emails thanking us. I have one paramedic that has multiple times done a transport to the hospital, and after she's done, she's gone back in to check on the people, and they've reached out to say, no one's ever done that to me before. They've never come back in to see how I did. There's another family that she actually reached out, they asked her to, and she did, and they were very thankful. So it's going above and beyond in those cases that a small community with a private, or with a municipality, that we're gonna try to go above and beyond that we haven't seen.
So another question about setting up the department. Right now, it's looking like it's about 8% of the town budget that this activity is involved with. Is that what you earmarked for? I mean, did you have that number in mind at all when you set up the department, or did you just say, I've got to create a core department and it's going to cost this much? And is that, I'm asking you a number of questions here, how does that compare to, say, other small towns of our size in the state and nationwide?
Yep, so we looked at a numerous amount of other towns and agencies, similar, smaller. We had to get, the staffing level we have is the bare number that we can have to provide service 24/7. Our pay is higher. Back to what Chief Gagny said, in order to get people to come here from Massachusetts, from Liberty, we had to have our higher pay. So the numbers we went off was what we felt at the time we could get people in here to do the job. So we looked at what other communities are doing, but it's hard, everybody's different in how they do it. A lot of departments do per diem, which is you put a calendar out there and everybody's part-time employees and you don't pay the benefits. But the problem is it's an absolute nightmare to try to manage and schedule because they're not committed to the benefits, the sick and the vacation time. So if you're on schedule tomorrow morning at 7 and at 6 you decide you want to go to the beach, you can just call out sick because you have no recourse. So it was hard to put numbers and try to compare it to others for what we're doing. It's hard to answer that with this is why we did it.
Jeff?
Are there areas of Rockport where if Northeast still had all their stuff together, that they could get there faster than what you have set up with our system?
Well, I mean, it's all based on location. I
Right.
mean, if it's in West Rockport, obviously we're gonna get there faster now, and if it was, say, at the Samoset, they're gonna get there faster.
My point, though, is that,
If they have the equipment and the people.
yeah.
Correct.
My point is, having had 1 or 2 adventures in the back of an ambulance, from the citizen's perspective, the faster that you have professional care next to you, regardless of what happens down the line, that is so key.
Absolutely.
To comfort, to medical, I don't mean to get into Doug's realm of medical stuff, but, and I have to imagine that having our own gear ready to respond to Rockport residents is going to make that number almost always be quicker than anything else.
I would absolutely agree.
And it's just so important.
I would absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Just my last question, Doug, and I'll give it to you. So you read you're certainly aware of what's going on with Camden and Northeast Ambulance and the regional. So my question is more to the revenue side. You've got, $250,000 in medical billing. Was that number, were you more optimistic about that before that development? Or is this after that development kind
No,
of?
those are numbers that is a number based on 598 calls. You take a percentage of people that are insured, how much you can claim from that. Again, Chief Whitetalk in Rockland gave me roughly what his percentages are. So that was a number based on if we were to average a continuum of 598, that would be roughly the revenue if we took a percentage of that number and billed, and they paid. That's what the revenue would have been.
And if the Northeast Ambulance, whatever their new relationship is, it looks like it gave them extended the life of that whole concept. Life support, I don't know. But is that going to materially affect?
It does not affect us in any way, shape, or form.
Because we could be going into, say, Camden or Hope or Lincolnville.
I mean, it could increase our revenues. If they're not available and we're called to go to another town, then absolutely that can increase our revenue for sure.
But that's not factored into this.
This is just for Rockport at this time because we don't know what those calls are going to look like. I do know that Rockland has moved us. They moved Northeast to the second. We're now number 1. Union's also moved us to number 1, so we've moved up on 2 departments to be the first mutual aid or paramedic intercept if needed. We also have a mutual aid agreement with Thomaston if needed. Northeast did sign a mutual aid agreement with us, vice versa, because there are times we may need them based on the car accidents most of you know we have here in Rockport. It's not one person, it's multiple. And I'm still waiting on Warren. So theoretically, we have the potential to have 5 mutual. We have 4 now, and we have a potential for a 5th mutual aid agreement to back up other agencies as well as for them to back us up.
You're saying those mutual aid numbers also are captured in the 60,000 revenue, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Plus, we would retain any medical billing. for those
Right.
calls.
Yeah, who's gonna do the billing?
No, a third party.
Comstar. It's
Okay.
It's on,
most everybody, Waldoboro, Belfast, Rockland, they all use this.
Is that a commission setup?
Yeah.
Yeah, so what we
It's,
build.
I can't remember, do you remember the number?
6.
6% of whatever it is.
Oh, that's a good number.
But we complete our report, we click send. We're done.
That's it.
Oh, nice.
And they are the ones that reach out to your insurance company or to you,
fight that.
and they're the ones that handle 100%
They'll
of that.
handle our collections as well for
lot to
like
be said for
self-pay
that.
people
Yeah.
or co-pays that are due. They'll handle all of that.
That's good.
But they know
On
all the
that-
coding and everything that's needed for that, so that makes it very slick, very easy.
Yeah. And to your point, John, what they're doing, it's still the same contract that we all had as 4 towns in Northeast. It's, the only difference is they're moving 1 ambulance into their station and providing 1 paramedic. It's still the same staffing levels. Camden's still gonna have to now sacrifice one of their firefighters to be assigned to that ambulance. It's still the same contracts. Nothing is really changing. The business plan, the business model, the finances, nothing has changed. It's just they say they're regionalizing, there's no regionalization. It's the same exact plan that they had. They're still working together, it's still the same contract.
So.
It's not a regionalization because they're doing exactly what we were doing with them. Well, actually, we're still doing it with them
Right,
until
right.
Tuesday. So it's the same thing we're all doing. It's not regionalization. They're not working with other agencies.
Okay.
On that same line, we're showing $105,000 in use of investment funds. Is that ongoing, or that's just for this budget?
Yeah, that is a new, so, I mean, this is for this budget year. There's still additional revenue in that investment account that to be used in future years. It's a gift that was made to the town many, many years ago that was for medical care of needy Rockport residents. So it's money that can be accessed for residents who don't have insurance, can't afford the ambulance bill. So it's revenue that can sort of cover some of the gaps in what we have in our ambulance billing procedures.
Okay, what's going to be the process, maybe you don't know this, but what's going to be the process for deciding? I mean, I ask because this is projecting we're covering 1/3 of the cost
Right.
of this program with revenues from medical billing from.
Right. And we will have to work that that out. The select board has the authority under that gift to make those decisions.
Okay.
So we'll have to, once we start getting some data to see how.
That number could go up and down each year, depending on.
Right, depending
board
on,
wants to do.
yes, and depending on what level of uninsured, needy folks in Rockport who can't afford the ambulance bill. And then this investment fund can pay that unpaid bill.
Okay.
A couple of questions here. I think they've largely been addressed, and they're for both John and Jason. So we had something like 598 transports according to Northeast Mobile Health. Do you know how many of those were no transports?
I do not.
Well, see, that'll be good to know, because I hear an awful lot of calls on the scanners that are no transports, and that also means no billing. And do we know what the payer case mix is? You alluded to it with Chris, but how many people are Medicaid, how many are Medicare, how many are private,
When we
and how many are
estimated it,
self-pay?
when we estimated it with our Comstar contract,
Yeah,
we estimated 30-something% Medicare, Medicaid,
which?
a
Because there's-
combination.
Yeah, but there's vastly different reimbursement for
Yes, but
Medicare versus
that's,
Medicaid.
we used 30% as the people that fell into those categories.
Okay.
We used, I wanna say 50% as private insured and 20% as uninsured.
Okay. Have we put together a policy yet about Rockport residents who are self-pay and then get charged for the ambulance? Are we just gonna write that off, or are we gonna
It'll
draw
depend
on?
on their financial circumstances as to whether we can access the investment fund for that.
So we have a policy in place for that?
We don't have a policy in place,
Okay.
but we will be developing one.
All right. And then I just want to follow up on John's comments, and this will be unpopular with some people in the room. But I absolutely agree that the future is municipal-based emergency medical services. John, I've been telling you that for a year.
Yep, that's right.
But then what happened is that, in my opinion, we had a failure of leadership. Because I've been close enough to this, I've been seeing huge personality conflicts between Camden and Rockport. And the future here was not to have a single small New England town run its own municipal-based emergency medical services, because it's incredibly expensive. And if you look at the literature, they point out that if a town tries to do this on its own, it's going to cripple their town budget. Now, I'm hoping that saner heads, as we move ahead, will see us do more of a regional service involving Rockland, Camden, Rockport, the surrounding small towns. So, in my humble opinion, instead of cutting a deal that's going to cripple the town, potentially, I would have just said, we're going to have to put up with Northeast Mobile Health until the time is right. Thank you.
And just hope you're not the stroke victim that's waiting 32 minutes for a
You know,
response.
Denise, I was in that.
Be careful not to set
And that
targets.
stuff, you know, that is such
Be
bullshit.
careful with that.
I
So-
apologize.
If I could, I'm glad you brought it up, Doug, because I disagree with you.
Of course you do. I would hope you did.
Well, no, from the standpoint of, for almost 2 years, Camden, Rockport, and Rockland met almost monthly. The chiefs, the city managers, town managers.
Yes, I heard all about it.
We came up with a full proposal
Yeah,
for regionalization. We
Yeah.
even met with Penn Bay.
yeah.
The price tag, if we had gone with this proposal, would add another 1.1 million to Rockport. So that's gonna cost you even more money if we go with this plan, because in order to keep a staffing level, we would have to have another full-time person, 3 full-timers on every single shift. So, did you read the Midcoast Villager on E9? Did you
Yeah,
read?
I did.
Okay.
Look, you know,
Well, no, you want us to
Alright.
work with Camden, you want us to work with anybody. I understand that. But all the fire chiefs in the Midcoast, including Waldo County, have said the same thing. It's not cheaper to consolidate and do regionalization. That's a
And that's
fact.
why I say it's a personality issue.
That has
There
nothing,
is-
money has nothing to do with personalities.
Yes, it does. The way the people work together up there, Jason, it was poisonous. And
Up
in
where?
fact, it still could be.
Up where?
In at least the two towns.
In reference to what, though? Am I missing something?
Can I ask you a related question?
From the front office to the fire chiefs, on down the line. So,
Let's also just understand that this is just to talk about actual numbers for this fiscal year.
you're right.
And
We
where
shouldn't
we're
get
going
into
forward.
philosophy, everything else,
We
and I
have other
apologize for
positions
that.
that will be coming open on the next ballot,
Yeah.
I'm sure, that we can.
So our
run through.
budget,
Well,
we have to deal with.
I do appreciate that, but we did have a really, really good conversation earlier about the challenges that small departments have.
Absolutely.
With recruiting, with retention, with getting people, with staffing people, with staying on top of equipment and buildings and all of that. How are you going to avoid or address the same challenges so that we're not here a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years from now with you saying, we need more people,
Absolutely.
we need more staff, we've got to build, we've got to expand, we need more vehicles, we need, because the challenges, again, we're experimenting here, we're going to figure this out together as we go, but I don't know how we can have sat through the discussion with the chief about the police department and the challenges they're having and not think that there are going to be those kinds of challenges confronting you guys as well that are going to have to be addressed.
Absolutely. Law enforcement is definitely a little different because of everything that went down. They're struggling even more than we are to get people to want to go into that workforce. It is a struggle, but it's a huge balancing act that we here in Rockport, myself, my assistant chiefs, we have put a plan together. We have put a work environment together. And I'm not saying we're better or worse than anybody else, but we have put a much different work plan that the people that are working there right now, again, 2 of them can retire soon. He's already said he's staying for another 10 years. The work environment that he's experienced here versus where he's from, he's never seen anything like it. The environment that we put in there on a daily basis, the flexibility that we give them on a daily basis. Put it this way, the overtime, do you know what our overtime budget, do you remember for the per diems?
5,000, maybe?
No,
If
no, it's
not.
way more than that. I can't remember.
We didn't do a lot.
We had 26 schedule changes that normally I would hire back. This crew's gotten along so good that they're flipping and flopping. It's called a swap. So I've only had to hire back 3 times in 3.5 months. So I've not had to do anything other than 3 times. Again, I'm not saying it can't change, but with the new station, the equipment that we have, it's maintained on a daily basis. Our floors are immaculate every single day. They wash the trucks every single day. They mop the floors every single day. We've given them the day room to hang out. They work from 7 to 5 doing their duties. The rest of the time they can sit. We bought them the recliners. We've had donations. We've received other things. It's the little things that keep people there. Until you've worked in this environment, I don't know if you understand where I'm coming from, but
I appreciate it. I wouldn't talk about recliners with the general public.
people donated recliners because
Why
at
not?
night, it's
Right.
absolutely in every single firehouse in this country. Recliners, couches, that's in every single, because at 5 o'clock at night in every house in this country, that's what happens. They sit in that chair because they're on duty still, but they're allowed to sit in that chair and watch TV at 5 o'clock at night unless they're on calls. But I'm not going to lie and hide that. People need to know that. When you come to an open house, you're going to see them there and ask, so at least you know what I'm referring to. The work environment we've created here is definitely much different than others. It's fun. We have a great time here. Again, the benefits that we're offering just internally with our group it's different than other agencies. And I've gone to all these chiefs to say, what can I do that you're not doing? If you could do this, it's going to make a difference. So I mean, there's not one specific thing I can say, but I can assure you the group that we already have, I mean, they're not taking time off. They're going to eventually, but it's working. And I mean, granted, it's only been 3.5 months, but these people have been doing this. Again, one guy's been doing it for 25 years. He said he's never been in a work environment like this. I mean, John talked to him the other day. He's ecstatic. He's never seen anything like this. He loves this job. I mean, he's in the station almost every other day hanging out.
Michael.
Question, when the discussion was about whether having Northeast Ambulance and just ambulance crews be more potentially cost savings, is our situation different because we're also employing those EMS workers as firemen also? We're in just an ambulance service, it would not?
Not necessarily, because our paramedics, the paramedics that we've hired are just paramedics.
Okay.
One does have his firefighter one, but the firefighters are firefighter and EMTs, so they can perform both, but the paramedic is the higher level. They can administer the drugs and those things.
And that's an important point, Michael, because I think part of the benefit of what we're getting with this is we now have some full-time firefighters.
Absolutely.
And we needed to do that. Our volunteer force was.
Oh, okay,
I
sorry.
was trying to get to that. but I
Yeah,
wasn't-
that there's a side benefit. Not only
Correct.
do we have this amazing EMS group that will give quick response to Rockport residents, but we needed to do something at the fire department because the sort of complete 100% volunteer force that we had, that's sort of changing, and it wasn't working all the time. You'd have fires in the middle of the afternoon and couldn't get enough volunteer firefighters to show up. So we were already, as a select board, understanding we were going to need to be hiring full-time firefighters. And this way, we've been able to sort of combine those roles for the EMTs.
Correct. So if we have a structure fire right now, the firefighter and the paramedic will respond in the ambulance. In that ambulance is an air pack, they have the tools. Unless there's some EMS need, the firefighter that's with the paramedic on duty will be putting an air pack on and going and doing firefighter duties.
So we're getting
Two birds with one
Two
stone.
birds, one stone.
yeah, thank you.
And faster to the site,
Correct.
yeah.
They'll be on, I mean, especially your 10 o'clock at night till 6 in the morning, they're already at the station with that ambulance. They're going to get there and be able to give a proper size up in a matter of minutes versus Clay, who has to leave his house now, drive all the way to the station, then get in the truck and then go. Yeah, now. So it definitely is going to reduce the response time for giving proper size ups of that nature, yes. Car accidents, structure fires.
Welcome.
I mostly have questions on revenue. I'll admit, the cost increase over even the increased contract value from last year is somewhat baffling to me, and I don't doubt for a minute you'll provide way better service. That's not hard to imagine, but I would like to see how the net subsidy of the town can come down. And so I guess I'm curious, one, to understand how much certainty we have around this $250,000 in medical billing, and with insurers not paying 100% often, that sort of thing. And secondly, what's sort of the hope? How much could we expect to get servicing, other towns and whatnot in a sort of blue sky scenario?
So on the revenue, again, we went on the lower end of what their percentage they gave, we went on the much lower end. So there is the potential that it could be, when I say much higher, it could be 290,000 to 300,000. It could be higher.
And is that just Rockport?
That is just Rockport, yes.
Okay.
Again, to John's point, we discussed it. I talked with a couple of the tenured paramedics. We got Tuesdays, again, D-Day for us. After 2 months, if things are going perfectly smooth and, Pembay calls and said, hey, we have a resident in Rockport that'd like to be transferred back to the home, that's something we may be able to start doing for Rockport residents.
Yeah.
We're already in town, the hospital's in our town. It may tie us up for 45 minutes. You do take that chance, as does any other service. That's something we may be able to do to bring them back to their home. Yes.
That's a billable service.
It is
Right.
billable.
Right, yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah,
it's
no,
as part of
yes,
revenue.
of course, yeah.
Yeah, as part of revenue. That is absolutely something that was discussed today that we could potentially do.
And in terms of mutual aid and other things, you have
That's a flip of the coin, whether they need us or not, whether their staffing levels are where they're at, whether they're Rockland super busy that day and they need backup. We just went down there
A couple days ago.
Sunday,
Was
was it
it-
Sunday? Monday? Saturday?
Was it the day they had the
With the
silo
grain
fire?
fire.
Yeah, Saturday we
Silo
went
fire.
down and we transported a patient down there for that day. So that's a billable, not only is it billable to Rockland for the fee for us to go, plus once we get Comstar on board, we can bill that insurance. So it's you get 2 bills for that.
And beyond mutual aid, are there other partnership opportunities with other towns we could look at in years going forward to?
We're already working with the city of Rockland and Chief
Right,
Wytalk.
okay.
We are starting training on at least twice a month now. We have an EMS training coming up in April, and we also have a live fire training we're doing with Rockland. We're already, the equipment that we have purchased almost mirrors Rockland, so that we can start purchasing stuff
Swappable,
together
yeah.
at a discounted rate. So the monitors we have are the same, the stretchers we have, almost all of the equipment we have, we can share those resources together. So there's a reason we work so closely with Rockland. They've been doing this forever. They have an amazing business model. It's worked very well. So that's why we are on board with what they're doing, is because we can start sharing a lot of that stuff.
Right.
We're already in discussion with the potential down the road of a fly car medic together to help provide that backup service as well. But we are working very close with Rockland now, yes.
Cool. Thank you.
I
That's good,
took
yeah.
the liberty of looking at Camden's budget, because you read these articles and, you know, it makes it look like Rockport's off there as the renegade and everybody else is cooperating and working together, which isn't a good visual. We don't like that. I think we've heard a good explanation tonight about how that's maybe a little bit misrepresentative to the readers. But looking at Camden's budget, their EMS and fire combined, EMS is, they're sort of wrapping it all into their fire department, is a little over $2 million. And they have no chance, there's no revenue until they get an ambulance. Whereas our net, you know, if you look at our combined fire and EMS, we're at $1.5 million. So we are essentially $500,000 ahead, because we have the revenue opportunities, and these are very conservative revenue estimates here that I think we've heard from Jason.
And we have 4 full-time, highly trained paramedics already employed and working. We're already billing. We already have an ambulance. We have the 2 ambulances. We are fully equipped
Right.
with everything already.
So you've done a phenomenal
Yeah.
job,
So
really,
we're-
No,
putting together
I
this.
have full confidence in that, to be sure. I fully trust your ability to staff this department.
I think to go off of that point though, Walker, like part of the issue is to go to another town and say, I'd like to sell you on a vision of something that's not tangible.
Right.
Right, and that, you know, we had, so a year ago, December, so December, I guess, of '23, you know, we had a meeting with the four towns at the Northeast base, and they were talking about where the increases were going to go. And this is in the midst of Camden and Rockport emailing back and forth of what are you going to do, or what are we going to do, and oh, you don't want to meet, why don't you want to meet? It doesn't matter. But the point of that was, and I think Jason's point to talk about the regional effort that he and Chief Farley and Chief Wytalk talked about is, visions can only go so far until there's something that you can put your hands behind. So 11 years ago, when our healthcare system radically changed and Camden First Aid, the ambulance service in this area, effectively collapsed in and of itself and asked for a $400-something thousand.
$424,000.
Thanks, Kim. You know, something to keep that group afloat. None of the 4 towns were in any other place other than to say, okay, how big do I write the check out? That was really the issue that I was in Hope then, but I was a taxpayer here. You know, I knew that we were in a situation where we had no other option. We would put it out to RFP. We had a number of people. We met, we talked, we looked at them, and we said, oh, that's $30,000. That's the best way to go. And for a number of years, I think it was. And then other things happened, and markets do what they do, and, you know, I won't go into that. And we've talked a lot about what that quality of care wasn't at a level Chief Peasley thought, and others, Town of Camden, you know, there was a lot of work on this. So when this started to come apart and Camden started talking about going a different way, and Rockport said, boy, we need to start talking about this as well, because if Camden leads, where does it leave Rockport? At the end of all that, and we were, you know, a little more than a year ago from now, and it was, what do we put on the table? And met with the select board and said, where does this go, right? What tangibly, what do we need to do? And the idea of still that figment or that gauzy idea to be able to talk about what regionalization might be is a really hard thing to get anyone to agree to unless it's real. And there's an ambulance, and there's a stretcher, and there's a Lucas machine, and there's people there. And I think just sort of, for 10 years, there was talk about trying to get out of that contract in various levels. It got higher pitches and lower pitches, but that's what happened in different communities. And now with that, the break in that, now there's an opportunity for a different way of thinking, and you can actually hold your hand out to Warren and say, is there something here? Thomaston, Hope, Union, we have something to offer and a vision that's something other than a service that regionally is not well thought of among those in the trade. That's just what it is. So I recognize certainly this is a big cost. This is a big push. I don't believe some of the dire projections that Doug's bringing forward are accurate in any way. Because we see municipalities do this all across the state of Maine. This is not like, we're not building rockets here, We're saving lives, and we can do that. I think the issue is, how do you break that model in such a way that you can support your own residents? And that was kind of where this conversation was with the budget and the select board a year ago. How do you make sure your residents are supported? You feel good about what that is. You have cost certainty about where you're going. The end of 3,000% increases over a 10-year period. And manage it and know what that system is, and then what? And to me, this looks like a low water mark. This to me looks like a part where it becomes part of a larger entity, whether it's Rockland, whether it's Camden, whether it's Lincolnville, Hope, Warren. This is the start to me of regional, still municipally based, but regional fire and EMS. And it's gonna take leaders, it's gonna take chiefs like ours to push the envelope, put things maybe a little bit on uncomfortable levels for people, but that's what it takes sometimes you gotta break the eggs to make the omelet, and that's what this model had to be. So.
But we've also put ourselves in a position where we could potentially start some type of regionalization.
Right.
When we put this together 3 years ago with Camden, Rockland, and Rockport, it was 10.5 million. Rockland was the only one that could do it. Camden didn't have the full-time employees, we didn't have the full-time employees.
That's right.
It would have taken us a year just to get to that level. Now that we have the full-time employees and the ambulance and the infrastructure, we can start that consolidation. And again, you can ask Chief Whitetalk. I bug him weekly about stuff, and we work close together. We're starting it. You got to get your toe in the door before you jump in. You can't just jump in with 2 feet. We got to start somewhere, and this is the start. We've got our foot in the door. We're starting to work with Rockland. We're starting to train with them. Again, we sent all our paramedics down there a few months ago for a whole day class. So we're working with them. We're starting that. It's baby steps to get there. We can't just do it all at once. But we are trying. I promise you, we're doing everything we can. I write grants. It looks like we have the potential for a $16,000 grant through Maine EMS that could be coming soon. The Lucas machine we got for $20,000 on a grant we just got. That's something that most agencies don't have. So we're working every aspect to save money, to work with other agencies. Some are willing to work with us, some don't want to. That's their choice. I can't force, as Denise says, we can't force a marriage. However you put that. You can't force it. Like, if they don't want to work with you, I can't do anything about that. Attempts have been made. We've done what we can. We're working with the people who want to work with us. It's going to be an amazing working relationship. It's just going to take some time to evolve to get to where it's going to make even more people happy.
Well, I hope we can regionalize.
Yeah, I mean, again, the conversation this morning, what's concerning about it is, and I have no doubt you're working as hard as you can with this. I have absolutely no, the same with the police officer. The challenge is he waved around a report from 2008 when people were very, we're going to do this, and here we are all these years later. I don't think through any fault of his I think you're working as hard as you can. I'm completely convinced that you're working to engage these. What I'm struggling with is how do we get past the professionals working on this to get leadership at the level we need it to actually have these conversations? Because I appreciate everything you said, but we had that same discussion about how hard it is to sustain these programs In these small towns, we cannot continue to do this. And I have yet to hear sort of a maybe that's not for this discussion, we're here to talk about the budget. But what is the long-term plan? Because these towns cannot continue to do this. We have excellent people, no doubt about that. But we're gonna be back here year after year, struggling to keep these programs alive if we don't figure out some way to do this regionally. I don't know how to make it happen, but somehow we've got to move that forward.
It's a struggle everywhere. The southern country, the areas that are much larger and rural, they're doing fire districts, they're making it work, but the
county levels,
they're doing it. It's county level, but you know where
Everything's county level, yeah.
You know where
Yeah.
our county is
Yeah.
right now. I'm on the executive committee for the dispatch center, and I don't even want to get started on that.
No.
I've been fighting that for a year and a half. There's zero chance I would put any of this
I
on the
agree.
county right now, because you may not ever get an ambulance.
I agree. I'm with you on that.
Okay.
Counties are no.
Yeah.
path forward.
Yep, good, important issues. Anything else for?
Yeah, I just want to reference the costs as it pertains to budget, because I think 8% is pretty good when you compare it to other towns in the area. Thomaston has its own EMS, correct?
That's right.
They're actually, this month, hiring a new full-time fire chief, EMS chief. They're going full-time. They're working into almost the exact same model we are as we speak.
Well, I kind of researched their budget, and their percent of budget is 13%, before they did any of the hiring. St. George, they have their own EMS service, correct?
They do, and their calls probably half, if not even more, 60% less than ours.
But it's almost 20% of their budget.
Correct.
You go to Appleton, they've got their own EMS, right?
They contract with the union.
They contract with the union.
Okay, let's not pay attention to that.
That's a big percent.
That doesn't make it right.
But, you know, if you
Unfortunately,
start
fire, EMS, and police are not a profitable revenue business in any way, shape, or form. They're stupid expensive. The problem we're running into nowadays, Randy with his drugs, is not Clay, but somebody of Clay's age calls because they broke their thumb and they want an ambulance ride. And yet they have 5 family members there. It's those calls, or I have the flu.
Yeah.
When I have the flu, I sit in bed and, you know, it's...
Seriously, some of the things you hear, I'm
If
like,
you listen to some of the calls,
Yeah.
that's the problem and why everything is getting so expensive these days, is what we're going on. And then you get there, well, can you do this? Well, I don't want to go to the hospital now. To Doug's point, the non-transports. There's nothing you can do about it. You can recommend, you can't tell them they have to, but you can recommend. It's a catch-22. It's not, I mean, this is not a business anywhere in the world that you make money on.
Well, you could transport them and charge them for it.
you can't make
Can't,
them
you
though.
can't force
Can't
them
force
to
them.
do
don't
that.
have any money.
You can't? Anyway, I guess my point is, comparatively, it looks like we're doing pretty well as a percent of our budget. So I want to commend you for that, Jason.
Thank you very
because
much.
I know the quality you're building is very high.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Anything else for Jason? At least on that.
Not on that topic.
Now,
He's got plenty of others though.
next is the fire department, 177.
177.
And you're the only employee.
And the volunteer firefighter.
We have
Yeah, and
26
then all the volunteer
volunteers.
firefighters.
Crazy what's happening.
27 of them, and Clay is our lieutenant.
Which we still have way more that show up consistently on call than any other town, anywhere.
That is
Very
true.
proud of our volunteer. I didn't mean to denigrate that, it just, I know as a select board, we were being told there's gonna be a time we've gotta start paying
It
full-time.
is, and you can hear it from other communities, other fire chiefs. You heard it at the Camden meeting the other night where only 2 full-time people and 1 or 2 juniors showed up. More and more towns are seeing the struggle. We've actually had a little bit of an influx lately. We've had more people join. We're very fortunate. We're averaging 12 to 13 volunteers
That's
for
amazing.
a call, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
I think our numbers are up to 28 right now. That's not, all consistent. We're also going to be getting into that time of year where Clay's canoeing in the pond and people are going to camp and golfing and fishing, and we're going to have those struggles from time to time, but we're very fortunate with the people that we do have when they show up. I mean, the Rockland call the other day, I think there was 13 or 14 people that went to Rockland to help.
Yeah.
We're very, very fortunate with the people we have. Most are in one way or another self-employed, so they have that flexibility to leave their job. Randy also made a very good point that, you know, back in the day, the fire department came first, then family. It has definitely changed. However, you know, the people we have are very dedicated. We have people 30, 40, 50 years on the department still that I use Charlie Knight every time. He's 80 years old,
That's right,
and
he
at
shows
2 in the
up.
morning, Charlie Knight is still there at 2 in the morning.
It's in his
helping
blood.
them.
It's in his blood.
We have a huge dedication from our volunteers, and it's pretty amazing.
Any questions for Jason on the fire department?
I have a couple questions on the, what are we purchased and the purchased and contracted services and the other contractual services, what is that?
Can you give a line number, John?
Line 4,000, 5,000, 3,000, 4,000.
So the 4,000 numbers are most of our, like, testing. We have to test our hoses, ladders,
Okay.
SCBA equipment.
All of
fire
that is
extinguishers.
NFPA required, inspections, testing that has to be done on all of our fire hose, all of our trucks, the pumps, all the fire hose, every single year. Every stitch has to be pulled off at the high school by a company, charged to a certain PSI, left for a certain amount of time, and then they put it all back. And that's almost $4,000 a year.
And then the 3,000 numbers, the biggest driver right there is vehicle repair maintenance, so, repairs on the fire trucks.
And then I've got a couple other sort of top line questions of, like, having the West Rockport Fire Station where it is now at the, you know, increased our capacity presumably to have a new station, and did we add any extra, I don't know, firepower out there with the new station?
Nothing, I mean, nothing's been added, meaning we're not going up in vehicles, we're gonna stay the same with the number of apparatus. We'll still have at least 1 to 2 on this side of town because of insurance ratings for everyone in this room, your ISO. Thus the reason we have to have 2 stations, thus we have to have equipment in both stations. West Rockport is a very central hub to get back onto the 1791 to get to one. But I don't think there's been, I mean, that I can think of for firepower over there. I mean,
Volunteers.
Location.
Oh, well, we're gonna end up with more vehicles in a spot where more of our volunteers.
So let me go, thank you, that's okay.
So
So
response
right
times
now,
will be
on
better.
this side of town, I don't have any drivers. I have 3 firefighters and none of them drive, because of whatever reasons. They just don't drive anymore. They've been doing it long enough, they don't drive.
Is
So
that
we
80-year-old guy?
I wasn't gonna say anything. We truly have nobody on this side of town. So most likely, we will have 3 trucks over there, being that, again, most of them all live right there, that for them to drive all the way over to here to grab a truck to go all the way to West Rockport. So we'll keep 1 truck here for, I have Neil lives in Camden, I live in Lincolnville, John Wickenden lives in, down by the Samoset that way, he comes this way. So we have some people that come here, but most people are gonna go to that other station, because that's where they live. And that was the thought process of this 6 years ago, 7 years ago, whenever Rick Bates was here. We presented it back then, but obviously the library at that time was the priority, and it was because we were losing people on this side of town for drivers, and we were struggling. So people like Clay were having to come all the way over here if there was a truck gone to get 1 truck.
So I guess one of the, you've sort of answered my other question, which is the insurance rates for homeowners out there. Does any of the West Rockport Station, you know, increased capacity affect their insurance rates?
It's only going to increase it by 1,000 gallons on a fire truck. The big things are where the fire hydrants are located and if we have tankers. But that new station's really not going to fluctuate anyone's insurance down or up.
And my last question.
But I'll let you know, John, when I get my renewal.
When you get your insurance bill.
Okay, well, I'm kind of curious, like, you know.
I will say that there hasn't been an increase in noise that I've noticed, which I thought.
I've told them they're not allowed to hit the siren until
Till after
your
my house? Okay. Okay.
That's in our policy.
Well, it's kind of interesting.
But I do honk every time I go by.
I know, I hear you.
It's kind of interesting because there are a couple of subdivisions that are sort of starting to emerge right out in that neck of the woods.
So one thing that we are doing, Orion, Interload Code Enforcement, is anytime any type of new subdivision comes in and it's got the capability of a hydrant system. We're requiring that they put hydrant systems into those subdivisions to help increase protection for the area. Main Water usually gives us one additional hydrant to put in somewhere every year. They just put one on our front lawn at the fire station, which is great. So now we can fill trucks there because we have nothing else on Route 90 towards Warren. And we have nothing towards Rockland until you get all the way down to the Green Thumb, which those hydrants are, I think they're less than 500 gallons per minute. So we're increasing at least one hydrant a year to try to spread out our coverage area.
And when they're doing new extensions, like the sister project they did when we finished the sewer extension down Route 1, we're working with them to install new hydrants while they're installing new ones.
Yeah, so the last hydrant used to be at Sea Light Lane and Circle K. There's now one at Madeline Lane. There's one across from Down East Magazine for the massive subdivision on both sides. There's one Dearborn Lane, and then right in front of the Sussman House. So we've added that whole corridor now is connected.
That's great.
Okay, my next question is, you mentioned in the upcoming challenges, or John did, about streamlining services, working with other regional community fire departments to streamline services. I'm just wondering, what did that mean? What does streamline services
Same
mean?
thing, it's the talks that we've been having with Rockland in trying to find ways where if Rockland has an event going on, they don't have to call a crew back in. We could send a crew down there to support them and back them up versus them having to call back in and vice versa. Trying to find ways that they could come up here to back us up for something. We're just looking at different options out there. So it's just, we're looking to streamline. So we're looking at options, we're talking. There's nothing that we've found that's a clear-cut winner yet, but it's stuff that we are absolutely discussing on I would say a weekly basis.
I assume that would include standardizing some equipment. And
Absolutely. So extrication tools, some of our most expensive tools are what Rockland has. Most of our turnout gear is the same, it's different colors, but I could loan a set of gear down to Rockland. It's the same with the EMS supplies and our equipment match. It's the same as the fire. We're trying to start purchasing all of the same items. Fire trucks are a little bit different. It is a preference on what they need versus what we need, but we try to work together on that.
So you have $150 for aviation fuel?
Yes.
What is that for?
So all of your chainsaws, the pumps that we have.
It doesn't have the ethanol.
It's the ethanol free, so it's VP. Is it VP? Is what we typically.
Yeah, 100 low lead is what we were on.
So it's like the can you go to at like Viking sells the
Yeah.
VP gas
Yeah,
can.
yeah,
So
yeah,
we
yeah.
only put that in there because we
Come
start them
along.
every single week,
Yep.
but we don't run them for extended period of time like on a call.
Right, so
So
you
what it stabilizes that. So that's what the VP gas, the ethanol. We used to be able to go down to Owl's Head. They let us for years. So we could actually go get the aviation fuel, and it was fairly cheap, but the state was finding out departments were doing this, and we weren't getting taxed for it, so they're not allowed to sell it anymore. So we now I go to Viking because they have such a large supply of it there, and we buy the cans for all of our pumps, generators. I mean, we have a bunch.
You didn't know we were purchasing an airplane this year? Flyovers?
I figure that's coming.
My son is in
Once we
school,
have
he'll
the
be
fuel.
taking that job as our private pilot.
Waiting for that. The helicopter to cover.
That's right.
No, I'm not flying an helicopter.
Once you have the fuel, it's easy to buy
My flight fixed wing.
anything else?
The wages, and maybe I must have missed something. The wages and insurance year to date seem pretty much at last year's budget. Just curious what's going on there.
So Wade,
Like health in 2540 is in excess of the 30 and in line with 23 to 24.
So we had, in 23, 24, we had 2 of the firefighters that we moved to the EMS department. And my guess is, the postings for those didn't get changed. So we'll
Right.
just have to fix that.
Makes sense.
We tried, I think John asked what our baseline is going to be. We're keeping fire and EMS separate for at least 3 years. so that we can get baselines and then we'll eventually consolidate. But we want to get a
Hmm.
baseline to understand what we're going to have to, I mean, this first year was super expensive with buying equipment and duplicating everything. Once we have all that, that's going to drop. But we wanted to be able to look it over for 3 years so that we can get that baseline to have a number going on down the road. So we're going to keep that separate for another year or so. Then I'll only have 4 budgets.
All right, anything else? All right, moving on. Emergency Management Agency, 217. That's Jason and Megan. Pretty minimal. Any questions? Okay. Move on to West Rockport Fire Station, page 301.
Now, can I talk about internet service?
Yeah, jump right in. I don't think, Jason or John, there's nothing you want to introduce with, we'll just...
No, you're 10 minutes early, but it's okay. Go
Nah.
ahead.
All right, just curious, what's going on with, why does it cost $6,700 for internet service? That's a lot.
Unfortunately, in this area, we have a contract with GWI that keeps our rates low because we paid to put the fiber line in. In West Rockport, we have to pay essentially commercial rates for internet and phones because we don't have a fiber contract that goes out to West Rockport.
So the new fire station will act as though it were the next office over?
Correct.
Because you have a dedicated line on a commercial thing, so.
That's right.
It's cheaper than running 2.7 miles of fiber, but
Correct.
it's having that, not even virtual network, it's having the private
physical
network.
network.
The secured one,
Right,
yeah.
Yep.
Take over, because that is absolutely the
No,
expensive one. I know.
Right.
That would be expensive, it does.
Have we ever had a conversation, I mean, or even could this be possible, to talk to, say, a Spectrum, and since we have fiber that we have capacity on that could serve some of their customers, could we do some trading there, or is that just too, logistically, just too cumbersome?
You mean taking Spectrum customers in the village who are on the current fiber line?
Yeah.
It's part of a different discussion. We're actually, we've just authorized using some of our ARPA money to expand the fiber from that GWI line to go get the harbor master's office onto that fiber, and then some additional expansion that can be done with the money that we have. I mean, we can keep that in mind. I don't think we would affect the budget right now. There's no...
But-
Spectrum's not the easiest company
Yeah,
to
no,
work
they're
with.
hard.
They're pretty...
It does seem very high though, John, I
Yeah.
will say, but knowing what you need.
Maybe,
and-
Michelle, do you have some sort of a little line you could like snake over to the fire
Yeah,
department? We could-
I'll run an Ethernet down.
Yeah.
Get 1,000 foot or so, we'll be fine.
Yeah, that's a premium rate.
It isn't, yeah, I mean, that is a.
Well, they make, that's the businesses, the commercial is
I'm not
big
an
money.
expert on business rates at all, but it actually doesn't surprise me that much if
No.
it's a business rate.
Really?
Again, I'm not an expert, but I have seen some
It's under commercial.
ridiculous commercial.
Everything's different with them. I've had to deal with different people. It's been a nightmare.
It's a
I mean,
big
John
money
can
maker
attest,
for these.
Just getting them in there just to get the lines, and then the guy that showed up to run it ran it underneath all the sprinkler pipes through the room, and didn't even put it up over the ceiling,
Ooh.
and ran it all the way. Like it's not been fun.
Not the best and brightest involved in that one.
It's not been fun.
Unfortunately, our
Time for
option.
municipally owned.
That's right, municipal. Yeah.
Ooh, we gave that a good run. Gave that a good run.
tried.
But the good
You
news
got
for
the
you is we're not doing it. Okay, anything else on West Rockport Fire Station?
No. Could it be, we just have recreation left?
Well, it's a,
I just one quick
oh, go
question.
ahead, Kim.
Which is good. General supplies, 5415, it went from 12.5 to 4,000. What was,
So the initial 12.5 was for the building startup to
Yep.
purchase the desks and items that weren't in the building contract. Like the bathroom supplies, like we had to buy plungers, and so we put the rate that at 12.5 to purchase all the items to basically outfit the building.
But John cut you back to 4,000, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
No plungers.
Yeah.
No plungers.
No plungers.
Bring your own.
Come on up, I got.
John cut it back.
Just have to share.
He's the boss.
There wasn't any explanation on there.
Well,
so
you
I
can
was
take it
just-
out of your
We're
party
not
supplies.
starting up the building twice, was I think my explanation. The guess was 4,000 was more in line with what it would take to keep the
Ongoing.
building going.
For ongoing.
Okay.
But could it be 6,000 a year from now, once we have a year of actuals? Possibly,
Maybe.
Yeah,
Okay,
you know,
we'll get a year of,
again.
a year
there's
of
a lot
data,
right,
a lot of new stuff.
Right.
okay.
Okay. Anything else? All right. Let's move on to recreation. We can end on fun and games.
We'll start.
We were behind schedule, now we're ahead of schedule.
What page are we going to, Denise? Sorry.
275.
This appears to be another mowing budget with some other stuff on the side.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Right.
Would you like a department with your mowing?
A lot of grass.
Yeah, a lot of grass to mow.
So,
That's hilarious.
six years ago when you took it over?
No, you? 4
You.
years.
You've only been here 4 years?
Yeah.
Feels like a lifetime. So 4 years ago when John started, he asked all of the department heads to take on an additional responsibility. I ended up with the Marge Jones Recreation Facility. For anybody that had been in there, it was at best deplorable. It was all kill weed in there. There was no grass. The buildings were falling down. When I said I would do it in front of the budget and the select board, I said I'll do it, but it's gonna take some money to get it back to where it should be for the community and for the people. We've invested a lot of time and effort, the rec committee. We've had a lot of donations. For anybody that's been in there at the end of last year, the winter before when did we lose the dugout?
Last one.
Yeah, last one.
Yeah, last winter, we literally had a dugout pick up and demolish because they're so rotten. They were built 20-something years ago. There was no maintenance done on any of it. Insurance, thank God, paid for one. Unfortunately, 3 of the buildings needed significant fix. Brian Fitzpatrick and his family business, who's on the rec committee, took their crews in and rebuilt the bottoms, restained them. We basically worked with Sports Field, who came in and killed all of the fields and redid them all. They are all as green can be. They look absolutely amazing in there now. The irrigation system is now on a remote timing system, so if it's raining, they automatically shut off. There's pressure gauges in there, so if it spikes, it automatically shuts off. So if a head breaks, we had fields that were flooding. That's all been completely redone. Matt from Buildings and Grounds has redone almost all the roofs in there at just the material expense. So he put all new roofing, shingles on. The reserve account, the tennis courts, if you saw the courts, 25 years, the courts had cracks in them. Basketball court crack was over 6 inches wide. Main track and tennis came in, completely remodeled the tennis courts. They re-put new posts in because they had bent in so bad. The posts are brand new, the netting's brand new. They repainted the entire court system with 2 different colors. We even put pickleball courts on there. So we have that in there. Tom Fence came in and refixed all of our gates that weren't closing and or working. So all of the gates have been properly fixed. We had a donation for a brand new flagpole that's not out by the road now. It's in the middle of the field so you can see it. We have water now run to all 3 fields for watering, or for the infield watering, as well as the concession stand. The concession stand's never had water. So we have water in there. Little League's buying a sink. They're gonna put a sink in there so they can now do dishes. The infields, if you've looked at them, Sports Field comes in at the beginning of the season and end of the season. They're some of the best fields. Little League has had All-Stars and Championship, and the other team said it's one of the best fields they've played at in years. So a lot of time and effort have been put into it. The road just got redone. Unfortunately, that's gonna have to be fixed now. But the road got fixed this fall, regraded, new material. The gate's been completely repainted. The basketball court was on the reserve plan to fix. Unfortunately, Main Track and Tennis said it was not repairable. The crack down the middle was so significant that the mesh that they put down would only hold for one frost and it would go back to the way it was. We got the cost to have a paving company. We did 4 different companies to find a price to come in, get the paving. It was almost $30-something thousand. I think the cheapest at the time was $34,000, up to almost $50,000.
Yep.
We purchased most of the paint. It's actually Fitzy LLC's is storing it all for us. Do you want me to go into?
You can go ahead, go for it.
John has done John, if you don't know, lives and breathes basketball, just so you guys know. John did some digging and some work with an amazing family in this area, who is donating pretty much the entire cost to redo the court now.
Nicely done.
We're finalizing that over the next 2 weeks, but they are going to cover the cost of the paving, the brand new backboards. Keep in mind the backboards that are there, they're probably the ones that Zach and Carl and I played with, the old round metal ones that when they hit the whole thing shakes. We're buying new Gladiator. It's a poly plastic that will last forever. Are they adjustable? I can't remember. They're not adjustable.
They'll stay 10 feet.
They'll stay 10 feet. But anyway, this generous family is going to pretty much cover the entire cost of it. We do have to put some money from our reserve in there to make up some of it. They're going to put the posts in. We have to pay for that. But the paving portion of it and the backboards will pretty much be covered by this entire donation from this family.
And that's outside of that 20,000 that's under revenue.
Yeah.
Private donation.
So what I expect will happen is all the costs will come in this fiscal year, not this fiscal year, but the fiscal year we're operating right now. So my expectation is once we sit down and work out all the, I mean, this is literally came together in the last couple days.
I was on vacation. I got the call that this happened. And,
Yeah.
and they're already tore up a quarter of the pavement today.
That's right. So Public Works is trying to find a way to save some money. And even before we knew we had this, we wanted to get some sweat equity. And that's one spot we can dig and not have an issue. So anyway, the town crew's over there digging and taking up that asphalt now. I would expect that the 45,000, the capital item will be removed from this, which is 7560, that expense, as well as the
You're
revenue.
gonna remove the whole 45.
I'm thinking that's where it's gonna end up, but I don't wanna do that, I don't wanna propose to do that tonight until we've had a chance to sort of line it all up. So by the time you guys meet, the budget committee meets, next week, we'll have that lined up for you, and you'll know where we are.
And take out the 20,000 private donation as
Yep.
well, sort of.
Yeah, that's right. So it'd be a net of 25,000 of the budget would be reducing, assuming this all goes the way I think it will.
Nice.
That's wonderful.
But then we wouldn't be actually contributing any to a reserve to continue to fix.
I would recommend we still put 10,000 in there. It's a large complex. The road needs a lot of work every year. There's a reason why I close it November 1st, is because as soon as it starts getting wet and people going in there, it destroys that road. I think you've been in there, any of you, the potholes are horrendous in there, so it needs to be fixed every year, so there's an expense with all of that.
The road is definitely, I mean, Jason's been trying, for those on the budget committee, he's put money in aside a number of years, and I've cut them and cut them because it's such an expensive cost, but once the facilities are sort of out of place, that's the only thing left that really could have.
I've tried to do
investment.
25,000 in paving every year, so that we can get from the road to maybe the tennis courts one year, and then into the
So the
Little League field one
recreation
year.
reserve right now has $62,295, is that?
No.
No, because we were gonna use what was in there. There's work left to be done on the tennis courts.
Okay.
That has to come out of there.
Yeah. And the paint's been has been ordered and stored, but not built in
Correct.
full. So we're sort of in the midst of that project and.
So the 10,000 from last budget year
Yeah.
is coming out of the reserve.
Basically, what happened by the time we paid our obligations for this year, added the $10,000 for this year, and then added the $45,000 for next year, it gave us just enough to do the basketball courts.
Right.
Right, which now are coming out.
Right.
Right, the
So
45 would come
that
out.
stays
But
back
the,
in.
by the end of this fiscal year, the rec reserve will be probably 20. Is that what we were using?
Right around there.
It doesn't, well, anyway, that's, I'm just
Let-
using the numbers here on the.
Yeah, let me,
You'll get,
let us get to work. Again, Jason just got back today, so I don't wanna,
Yeah.
but I'd like to get something, so at least we have that in place for your meeting here next week, and then,
so you'll come back to us on that
Right.
with some, okay.
exactly.
For those, I mean, it'd be nice to pull in, like, the facility's really changed, all the buildings, the watering buildings have all been leveled, and repainted and stained. It looks
That's very,
10 times better than it did 4 years ago. It looks really, really good.
I mean, it's gonna
Thank you.
take 10 grand a year to continue to
Absolutely.
That-
retain
that's
that
Jason's point,
infrastructure,
is
and
to
there's
keep
no
adding.
reason, after we just sat and talked about highways for however long about maintaining everything, to not keep putting money in a reserve, because we're
Yep.
for sure gonna spend it.
For sure.
And if we maintain our standard of, we're gonna take care of stuff we have, then we'd be silly not to keep some going into the reserve.
We had two big projects. The rec committee was supposed to meet, some things came up, we didn't, we're meeting next week. The big two items on there now is to add additional parking in there, as well as we want to move, if anybody's been in there, the playground right now is way down by the tennis court. So it's right when you pull in. A lot of parents don't feel comfortable. If you've been in there during Little League every year now, you go in there, don't you?
Oh, sorry,
It's packed. There's cars all the way out to the road. I've never seen numbers like we've seen. And the parents don't feel comfortable with their kids way down by the tennis court where they can't see them by the road. So the next thing is we've had a company come in and grind out by the back where the two sheds are. And we're going to put some fill in there, and we're going to purchase a new compliant playground that will go in that back corner so the parent can literally sit there and watch their daughter play softball and their son play Little League. So we want to move, we're going to leave the playground there because it's embedded in concrete, but we'll move one so that it's safer. That's one of the biggest gripes parents have is the safety of their kids. They cannot see them, so they don't let them go down there and
Yeah,
play.
makes sense.
So the adding of parking, the big thing now also is pickleball. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. They want their own courts. I told them that Main Track and Tennis has agreed to put in four courts for $150,000 if they want to come up with the money. The rec committee has absolutely agreed to put the 4 courts in where the additional parking is going to go. So we will put the courts in if somebody wants to come up with the money, but we do have room for 4 pickleball courts that would be designated just for pickleball, with their own fencing and all of that, some bleachers and stuff.
MRC and GoTech covered.
They got 6 or 8 indoor courts coming.
Yeah.
The problem is there's a fee there, there's not here, that's the big.
And
Well, that does raise the question-
MRC is adding about another 4 pickleball courts, so they just were before the planning board.
Yeah. It is interesting, I mean, when you look at the revenue here, $3,000 for usage fees with all the different teams, and is there any ability to increase that?
It's
or-
not teams, it's based on the league, so, the Five-Town Little League pays, or softball, the girls softball pays $1,000, the boys Little League pays $1,000, pitch pays $1,000, and Babe Ruth, there used to be 3 Babe Ruth, I don't know, Legion, most of those have gone away, so there's only Babe Ruth now, and they're only there on the big field, I think it's only like a month and a half now, so we charge them $500. So those are really the only fees for anybody that reserves. So if you reserve, then there is a fee attached to it. Other than that, it's first come, first serve.
Okay.
100% of those funds, though, go directly back into it.
Right.
So for Little League, we now, last year we purchased all brand new bases. So they have brand new bases for games that they take out so they stay white, and then they put the practice ones back. So we purchased the bases for them. We bought the pitching nets for them. We bought them the feed and stuff that they put down.
And this is sort of a regional, I mean, these are all sorts of folks all over, throughout the region, not just Rockport, who
Absolutely.
benefit from March
Yeah,
Jones.
so the 5 towns, it's Camden, Rockport, Lincolnville,
Yeah.
Appleton.
Regionalization.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep.
It happens. Great. Well, wonderful job. I mean, that's amazing what you've been able to accomplish over 4 years. Thank you. Anything else for Jason? Anything else on the budget? I think we're done tonight, and now we have a back-to-back tomorrow night.
I did hear from a very reliable source that the roads are extremely slippery.
That's what Randy
It took
said.
someone multiple routes to get home because he could not get up over hills. So just be careful.
When you live in Sears Mall.
I know, just be careful. I said, well, we could put in the budget a four-wheel drive vehicle for you, but,
Oh, but your session's over, sorry.
Did he forget how to drive?
Maybe we should increase his training budget.
Very good. Tactical driving
How
to
to
get
drive
up
up
over
a hill
hills.
is just-
So just be careful out there.
Yeah. I have been seeing all the plow lights.
Right. That's where they don't plow, Doug. They don't plow off.
So you can go back and forth. See those green
Am I
lights?
over plowing?
Yeah, yeah. Black streets.